4, 3, 2, 1. And good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Infrastructure and Economic Development Committee for August 18th. If you're watching from home, all members of council have the right to participate in conversation here, but the voting members who can vote and make motions here are Councillor Thiessen, Councillor Clayton, Mayor Given, and then myself. We'll start with item 1.1, and that's the Director's Service Area Update with Director Glavin.
Thank you, Chair Bressie. We'll start with economic development. For the economic development recovery funds that were approved by Council, the beautification and local marketing grants will open for applications on August 24th, so next Monday. They were reviewed on a first-come, first-served basis, so applicants are encouraged to apply early. And first-come, first-served and for qualifying, so as long as everything's in order, it'll be on a first-come, first-served basis. Going to North, the committee has met and are looking at planning the event again for February 2021, but also obviously taking into account what that could look like with COVID restrictions. The business resiliency team has been working to deliver the digital marketing workshops with Community Futures in 910, and that program is closed for applications, and successful applicants will be notified by the end of the day today. As well, the team partnered with Myers Norris Penny to update local businesses on changes with the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, and the recording of that is available on the city's YouTube channel for anybody who wasn't able to make it or wasn't aware. As well, the Support Local Video Project, Economic Development is working with Communications and Strategic Marketing on a Support Local video campaign featuring local business owners and leaders. In engineering, we have posted the playground replacement program tender. There's only one site this year that we're doing in Crystal Lake Estates. As well, we have put out the trail program tender for 3 different sites in a few areas of Mission Heights, Patterson, and as well as Crystal Lake Estates. We recently awarded the snow dump tender. This is to redo the lining on there, and work I think is actually going to start this week. We awarded the Crystal Ridge Road Rehab tender, our Phase 2 Road Overlay program tender, our traffic signal tender as well, where there's 7 sites, and that's a range of things that we're doing from full replacement as well as the relocation. In transportation, changes, the signs have been ordered, and we expect as well. In one of the things between engineering and transportation is that they both do a number of things regarding our road projects. Engineering typically does all of the large scale ones, and the small scale ones are done in transportation. So we do have transportation out there doing a few road projects as well that are in the transportation or traffic planner. So on Westgate Drive over by the Friendship Center, we're doing some milling and filling, as well as 94th Avenue Resources Road, 124th Avenue between 100th Street and 102nd, as well as 92nd Street over by the marshalling yard on Park Avenue. In parks, we removed some trees at the Rotary site downtown. As well, we have relocated our small robotic mower from the baseball fields to the outdoor pool. So we'll have a higher level of service. We installed what we're calling the doghouse, which is essentially a home for it where it can go back to charge every night and then continue mowing during the day. We're out pruning fire blight from a number of the apple trees around the city. We have recently repurposed the Dave Bar tennis court and converted them into 2 new basketball courts, as well as new paving in the area, and the line should be painted this week. And that's my report.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Chair Bressie. Thank you very much, Director Glavin. Just a question for the intersection along 92nd and 68th. I think this is, I've asked this question a couple times, but it is a pretty choppy left turn lane with all the big trucks driving over top of it, and it's getting worse, and I imagine it'll get worse after the winter. Do we have any plans to mill and fill that or to correct all sort of the sort of the wobbly potholes that are forming in the turning area of that road?
Yeah, so 92nd and 68th Avenue was a part of a road rehab tender this year. So unless they run out of construction days, that should be done this year.
Beautiful. Thank you very much.
Councillor Friesen.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Glavin. My question is a quick one, hopefully, regarding fire blight. I've had a couple of residents that, because I like to talk about trees and plants and things, and I rather enjoy gardening, I've talked with my friends some, and fire blight has come up as a concern with residents as well. Is it one of those that residents should also be treating their trees, or it will continue to be a problem, or is it, like, does it spread through the trees? And if so, is there any communication that might go out just generally so that residents can be aware of how they may identify it in their own trees and then treat it?
Yes, I believe on our website we do have a page on parks that does identify fire blight as an issue and does talk about what to do if you have fire blight. This is also something that we could, highlight again on our pages, and perhaps is something that we could include something brief when we bring forward our naturalization report, although they don't directly dovetail together there. We will have the subject matter experts. Right now we have on our outstanding items list September 15th. We're going to aim for September 1st to have them in front of everybody here. So we would have Amy Needham and Robert Carroll who would be able to speak at length, but we can look and see on the public and what we could do to better promote how to treat fire blight.
That's great, thank you. And then I would just add to that, any other conditions that are of concern this year. I know black knot might be another one, but thanks.
Any other questions? Councillor Clayton.
Thanks, Councillor Bressie. Director Glavin, can you tell me a bit on, I know we've talked a little bit about this at last council meeting, I think it was. Can you tell me a bit of when we expect to receive a report, year-end sort of analysis and report in regards to naturalization? How long will it take to sort of collect, the information from the operations of it and sort of an overall assessment from it?
Yeah, thanks, Chair Bressie. So this is, we're going to bring forward the report that was requested by Council at latest September 15th. We're aiming for the 1st of September. But as far as a recap of the year, as far as how things have went, that is something we could bring forward later on this year after, we've had a full year of it. Although for naturalization to take effect, usually you're looking at a minimum of 2 or 3 years before you would see the ultimate effects of it, as it takes a while for the natural vegetation to overtake some of the other vegetation that's in there, whether that be, some of the dandelions or other more unsightly weeds, or some of the other weeds that we haven't yet treated. On the noxious weed side, we're continuously out in all of the areas treating the noxious weeds, including the areas that we've naturalized, and that will continue. But as far as a full report on the overall impacts and effects of what it looks like would take some more time. But we will have the naturalization report requested by Council within the next 4 weeks.
If I may, Councillor Bressie, I just looked and I couldn't find the actual motion, but does the motion, can you recall, Director Glavin, does the motion request information on financial savings? I know there was an expectation in regards to budget, what it looked like, but I'm wondering if we're going to see the numbers of the reality of what it saved or didn't save over the year.
Sure, I don't recall that directly in the motion, but that's something we can speak to for sure.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Thiessen.
You are observant, Chair Bressie. Thank you very much. Just a question. I want to follow up on Councillor Friesen's question on fire blight, Director Glavin. I know in the past we had an issue with our black ash disease that was going around hitting all our black ash trees, and our parks department went around and they pulled out the black ash that was diseased, and then they replaced it. Are we offering or the tree replacement program still, and would we offer it to people's trees who are suffering from fire blight on the city's portion of their property?
Thank you, Chair Bressie. I'm not 100% sure on the correct answer to that, so that's something that I can follow back up with and get that information to you.
Awesome, appreciate it, thank you.
Great. Are there any other questions? Well, then we can move on to item 1.2, and that is the first disposition of city land, and this one is on Resources Road, and that is Mr. Halliday and Sheldon.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So administration is recommending exploring the sale of approximately 17.83 acres parcel of land located on Resources Road between 68th Ave and 78th Ave. We're recommending to explore the potential development opportunities through way of expression of interest. The EOI will allow the city to gauge both market interest in sale of the property and development concepts with no obligations should appropriate opportunities be identified. We then return to council for a motion to dispose of the land to a potential developer. Independent appraisal was was conducted. An evaluation of 1.275 million was determined for the land. There's no encumbrances on the land that would prevent the sale or any potential development. So we're looking to take forward a recommendation for the expression of interest to explore the sale.
Great. Just before we get into questions from others, just a process question for administration. Is this the type of thing where committee can direct that the expression of interest get issued, or is this the kind of thing where committee needs to recommend to council?
Committee will need to recommend to council.
Okay, great. And then I think I saw Councillor Blackburn with his hand up. So Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you, Councillor Bressie. I guess I just have one question, and it's regarding the nature of the parcel itself. It contains a chunk of wetland, and I'm wondering why a developer or other landowner would want to own that part of the parcel, and whether or not it should be excluded from the parcel for sale.
Through the chair. So the city has taken what is required for storm management to the south through the wetland that is located to the south along 68th Ave. There is a portion remaining of natural wetland within Lot 8, which we're recommending for disposition. However, through an environmental appraisal and report, this land has potential to be developed, but we would look at that through negotiations with a potential proponent.
Sorry, I understood from what I read that it could not be developed because it was protected.
There is no ER designation on that at the moment, and as by provincial statute, that would be looked at through subdivision, whether land would have to be taken as ER through a subdivision, or if it can be developed.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Platt.
Thanks, Chair Bressie. Just a couple questions. One, can I get an idea of if this were to go ahead, how the property would be marketed, just so I understand when the property goes for sale, what happens with that from the city's perspective?
So I'm going to defer to Mr. Chad Sheldon on this.
Sure. Yeah. So through the chair here, I'll respond to the marketing. The property will be done
two separate ways, essentially. One is it will run through Alberta Purchasing Connection, so APC. It'll be listed there. And then just through economic development contacts that we've got specifically in Alberta, the Alberta Real Estate Forum in October. We have some connections through there, and we'll have the opportunity to present there. And that would be a great opportunity to market the property.
Okay, and just so I understand, for local, would we be putting a traditional for sale sign or something on it? I mean, I appreciate we're trying to find somebody from out of town, but I've had a lot of comments from people saying when we try to sell land in town, they don't know what's for sale unless they go on our website. So I'm just wondering if the additional stuff marketed on the property. Yeah,
it'll the first place it'll be is marketed on the city website. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just curious. So will we actually have a for sale sign on the land, like a traditional land sale would have?
That's something that we could definitely explore.
Okay. And thank you. And my other question is just, I'm just wondering if the administration had identified enough of this piece of land for anything else that could be potentially for city use. And I guess for me, I'm wondering, Councillor Blackburn kind of alluded to it already with the wetland potential there, but is this an opportunity for us to look at a second marshalling yard? I know we've got a marshalling yard right across the tracks, but you've got to go across the tracks. And so I watched a lot of snow trucks sit on this side of the train tracks, just literally to get to that side. So I'm just wondering if there's any chance that we could be looking at smaller parcels like this becoming great snow storage dumps, potential boneyards for leftover materials, if that was contemplated.
Through the chair. So the initial process, we identified the need for future capital projects such as snow dump and stuff, and nothing was identified for this parcel.
Okay, thank you.
I do see Director Glavin popping in. Was there anything you wanted to add to that, Director Glavin?
Thanks, Chair Bressy. No, I suppose nothing all that significant aside from just the use of a marshalling yard in that area. We didn't identify that. If we were going to do the capital improvements necessary for a marshalling yard, we would likely put one in the northwest part of the city for logistics. Although we do have snow trucks that do occasionally get tied up with the train there, we haven't identified that as a significant enough issue that we would put another one in that location at this time.
Thank you. I saw Councillor Thiessen, then Councillor O'Toole, then Mayor Given. So Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Chair Bressy. Just a question for Gordon here, and it's in regards to the wetlands as well. Maybe this is also for Chad, but it appears that even in the report, there's going to be some some added costs besides just the land purchase to anyone who might own this as far as doing their environmental assessments. And there's a good chance that Alberta Environment Parks could come back and say, well, sorry you bought that land, but you can't develop it because that Wetlands Act is still in force. Was there any consideration of shrinking the land and not including the south parcel of this piece of property?
Again, through the chair, Bressy. So if we were to subdivide and remove the wetlands prior to exploring potential development opportunities, the city would have to cover the costs of subdivision. And that would be added costs right off the bat to get the project rolling. Through the expression of interest, we have the opportunity to discuss with proponents the potential costs, possible cost sharings, and how a project and development may look on this. So we opted to keep the parcel as a whole parcel and explore different opportunities through the EOI.
Okay. No, thank you.
Awesome. Councillor O'Toole and then Mayor Given.
Thank you very much, Chair Bressy. Just some concerns. I was wondering if there was any underlying pipelines or electrical connections underneath the ground that could prohibit construction of buildings. I know on the other side of the tracks there was some land that was rezoned a few years ago, and it had issues of old pipelines and stuff that would basically prohibit some construction. Also, the other question I have is, what are the concerns about having access from Resources Road into that property? I know this is probably questions that you may not be able to answer now, but if there's any answers there, I wouldn't mind hearing them.
Yeah, thank you. Very good questions. Through the chair there. So we did do a full search on the site here. So there's no registered easements or encumbrances at all on the parcel, and it remains completely undeveloped. As far as access, so there has been some access identified north on up by 76th Avenue. There's potential for a multi-directional access in north of the storm pond. If you refer to the attached property diagram there, you can't quite see 76th, but allows for a potential multi-directional. And then there has been 2 additional right-in, right-out identified along the parcel boundaries with Resources Road.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Mayor Given.
Thanks. So I just, in terms of the expression of interest process, how extensive a submission are we looking for from, proponents that might want to put something forward? Is it a labor-intensive process? And the reason that I ask that, to be fully transparent, I'm not sure that at this time this is the right land to be selling when we're at a bit of a dip in the market, and there are other vacant commercial lots across the city. And so I would worry that we might not get best value if council chose that they did want to sell this. So, with those sort of considerations, I'm not 100% sold on we must sell this today. I would be interested to see what could come up, but I also don't want to cause any proponents to go and spend a whole bunch of money to come forward with something where council goes, actually, given all the circumstance, maybe we're not ready to do that. So can you give me some sense of how complicated a process is going to be for somebody who might want to submit an expression of interest? Because if we're not sold that we need to move on this, I'm not sure that I want to cause the private sector a whole bunch of costs if we're just kicking tires.
Sure. If I could respond through the chair, Bressie.
Please.
So the expression of interest process, it was specifically done in a way that it would not be an onerous process for the very reasons you state, Mayor Given. So it is initially quite a light process, just to really shake those trees and get the interest and further discussion. From there could be a process which would be a little bit more intensive, and at that point, typically that's where a proponent might have a little bit of time and cost put into it. But initially, very light process.
Yeah, go ahead, Mayor Given.
Yeah, so just to follow up, so does council have really a couple of decision points here? We can issue the EOI, see what comes back, and then if something comes back, is there another process that happens after that before we would actually, sell the land?
Sure, through the chair. Yes, so that is the option where the expression of interest is at this point a no obligation process. So under discovery, if there was an opportunity that we wish to pursue, at that point, we could choose to go to a formal process, or we could choose to negotiate directly with a proponent.
But council will have an explicit step that they have to take if they want to move forward to the more intensive process.
That's right. Council would have the opportunity to direct administration to pursue an opportunity.
Thank you.
Councillor Minhas, then Councillor Clayton.
What if we prove to put land on sale, and if we don't get the right price, what we have to give away, or we can hold on to till, because the market right now may not be feasible because of all this coronavirus effects, or this is the right time to put the land on market, I wonder.
Yeah, and I think what I'm hearing, Councillor Minhas, is that this isn't putting the land on the market right now. This is just trying to see if there's interest from potential sellers to see if we want to put it on the market.
Oh, okay,
so
thank you. That's correct.
no obligation to put it on the market at this point if we pass this motion today.
Okay.
Councillor Clayton.
Thanks, Chair Bressy. I'm wondering if you can tell me, and I didn't see it in the report, but maybe I missed it. Initially, what was the land bought for? What was the city's intention with it?
I'm not sure if anybody from administration is able to answer that.
There, sorry. We do not have any historic as to why it was bought, but initially this parcel extended all the way up past the Resources Road Fire Station and Railtown. The city did own all of this portion historically, and this is what we have left.
Okay, and if I may, Chair Bressy, I appreciate the EOI as a sort of a safeguard for us to, engage with the market and test the waters. But if we don't see a need for this land, I wonder why not just sell it? And that's for Mr. Halliday.
Thank you, through the chair. So we do have the potential to just market this and sell it in the regular way. However, we feel the expression of interest allows us as a city to engage with the market out with Grande Prairie and further afield.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, maybe this is a committee discussion, but I appreciate that the market may be a little soft right now, but hanging on to an asset that we don't have a need for, I don't really see a need to do that. I think that ultimately, if we had a plan for it, that may make sense with an EOI. But if we don't have a plan for it, we never really did have a plan for it. It was just an investment opportunity, which over time turned into great opportunities, as we saw development through time. But right now, I don't really see the need to hang on to this. And I think that if this is something that may trigger some economic development because somebody gets it at a price that is a little bit below market value, but in turn allows them to spend some money in an investment, such as a rail town too, or whatever that may look like, I think that's something that committee and council should consider. I totally appreciate the EOI as a safe way for us to gauge the market and see what's out there for potential investments. But I'm just curious what the rest of the committee at this point thinks of EOI compared to selling it outright.
Well, and I saw Mayor Given had thoughts to that, and Councillor Friesen after Mayor Given.
Yeah, I guess that is absolutely a council sort of discussion because it is a philosophical question about what things the community might value. I would hazard to say that there will be people that will value the fact that there's trees there. Not all of us will value that the same way, but there will be some people in our community who will value the fact that there is a stretch along a drive where there's some trees. We've heard questions about the wetlands that are there. And, for a long time in our history, we sort of said, they're wetlands, if you fill that in, you can develop on top of them. That's not necessarily how it's seen today in a modern stormwater management sort of approach. And I would hazard to say that there's a whole bunch of people in our community that would say, hey, sort of natural features are kind of an important part of my community. So there's those types of things that are hard to place a dollar value on. I don't believe the city, I would be very surprised to find that the city bought that as an investment opportunity. I think it probably is more like an MR sort of area that had been, just historically, given to the city either through the railway development or, I'm not sure that there was a city council that said, hey, let's buy this at a low price and sell it at a high price in the future. So, you know, I think that once this information that the city is considering making this marketable goes out into the community, we probably hear lots of different views about the types of values that people will place on it, and not all of those will be monetary values. And the other big thing is that you know, the city holding land is a bit different than a private person holding land. There may be needs or uses for it in the future that we can't think of today. And so it's not about how much money, you know, has the value increased to a point where we can get some return out of it. That's a part of the equation for sure. But certainly for me, it would be the idea that we are stewards of the ownership of this land for a period of time, and there'll be other people who will take on that stewardship, and they may have needs in the future that can be satisfied by this land, and we remove the opportunity for them to solve those needs if we dispose of it just for the sake of disposing of it. So I think there'll be a range of different opinions, probably within council, but certainly out in the community as well.
Councillor Friesen and then Councillor Palat.
Thank you, Chair Bressie. And Mayor Given actually said a lot of what I was thinking, perhaps more eloquently than I could have. But yeah, what one resident values and would like to see there, and what another values and would like to see there are completely different. And I appreciate that the expression of interest is of a fairly low on the onerous scale for people who are wanting to perhaps consider purchasing this. However, I don't think the timing is ideal. Not that there may ever be an ideal timing. I'm not saying it's certainly the wrong time to do this, but is it ideal? You know, there are a lot of individuals, developers included in the city right now who are sort of holding their breath about what's to come in the next year or 2 years or however long the case may be. And I would probably, if I could vote on this, I would probably suggest that the idea be delayed until at least the spring for consideration, even of an expression of interest, just till we get a little better sense of how our economy is going to recover and how what our city may value and may need going forward. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I see Councillor Plott and Councillor Friesen. You will get to vote on this if we do anything. Just a reminders committee that this is committee sending to council, not committee deciding. So Councillor Plott, and then I'll insert myself and then go to Clayton.
Thanks, Chair Bressie. I guess for me, I don't understand if the city's identified that we don't need the land, why we're even doing expression of interest. I guess there's that real estate developer side of me going, are we selling this or not? And so I would hate to see a proponent take all the time and effort to come up with an idea, and then we come back here and we sit as a committee and go, you know what, I don't like that. I wish it was different. We've got vacant land all over the city. I think it's, as a steward of our city, if we don't need this land, I don't know why we'd keep it. I'm fine with land banking. I think we should be looking at acquiring land all the time. I think it's important for the city to acquire land. But if we don't have a use for this, I think you put a for sale sign on it, like most people would do, and you move on. I think we're overthinking this. I think we're going to have the same conversation on the next item on the agenda. And in my opinion, our city's got so prescriptive of what we want to see on land because we think we're being proper stewards. I think it's hurt us with our land sales a lot, and that's my opinion, but I think it's hurt us a lot, and asking for an expression of interest confuses me of why if we're just going to sell it, put a for sale sign on it, the highest and best use will come forward, a proponent will do something on it, we'll start collecting taxes, and life will go on. So I'm not sure, yeah, the timing is bad, but if you're waiting for real estate to ever be good in Grande Prairie, you wouldn't put anything for sale the last 5 years. So I just think if we're looking at selling it, put a for sale sign on it and move on. And let's hope that somebody develops something there that works well for our community. But we can't control every little piece of land in the community to that extent. And so, although I'm not a voting member, I would love to see us make a motion that this just goes for sale and not even worry about the expressions of interest on it. Thanks.
And thank you. And just asserting myself a little bit, I know that my preference if we're going to recommend something to council would be to just recommend it for sale in terms of I don't see a lot of value for this piece of land. I feel different about the other one, but for this piece of land, I personally don't see a lot of value in the expression of interest process. I think that it's either this land gets developed into something commercial or it doesn't. I don't see a lot of, I don't think the city needs to have its fingers in how this land develops if we sell it. And so I don't see the need for the expression of interest here. That being said, I'd point out that that whole process of an expression for interest selling it, that engages with sellers, that doesn't engage with the public. And Mayor Gibbons absolutely right that there are some people who probably do value driving by those trees and value having, even though it's not environmental reserve, it feels like environmental reserve there. And I think I honestly don't know where I end up landing if council is voting on do we sell this land or not. But I'd rather have that conversation of just are we selling it or not, rather than having the step of an expression of interest personally. I see Councillor Clayton, and then I'll come to Councillor Friesen.
Thanks, Chair Bressie. Yeah, I'm of the same thought as you, Councillor Bressie. I feel that this land could potentially become a great little economic stimulus piece. I think that with the right development and landscaping, that as much as I appreciate the natural state of vegetation that is currently there, I think with great architectural design and landscaping, that it also has a very appealing aesthetic addition to the boulevard. So if we don't have a plan for this land, to do an EOI just seems like we're tippy-toeing around the subject and not really committing to the fact that we want to sell. So, you know, I think that fair enough, the market is undervalued right now, but as I said before, if somebody gets a great deal and that in turn means that they can afford to develop and put some actual substance on that land, then why not allow them that opportunity? We've hung on to this land long enough with no plan for it, and we have no plan for it in the future. So I think it's a logical thing to sell. To hang on to it to get an EOI, I do appreciate your comment that public at least then can engage in it. But I still think that ultimate end of it is getting it to a sale. So in order to get it to a full council conversation, I'd be prepared to make a motion. And I know you have someone else in the queue, so I can wait.
Yeah, well, why don't I let Councillor Friesen get in, and then I just want to highlight one thing, and then I'll get back to you to make a motion. So, Councillor Friesen.
Thank you, and it will be very quick, Chair Bressie. I realize I left one important comment that I had on the table. Again, I'm not sure that the timing is necessarily right, but my preference would be to jump over the EOI and go directly to a sale. We have, we have a zone there. We have standards for that zone. We have fantastic developers in Grande Prairie who, to Councillor Clayton's point, could, perhaps preserve some of that or not with some beautiful architecture and landscaping, and that's okay too. But timing just makes me worried. Although having said that, to put it on the market, it sits there just like it sits empty. So perhaps my point is moot.
Great. Thank you. Just the one thing I will highlight to committee that I read in the documents about the expression of interest process that might be worth being cognizant of is there was, if I'm remembering right, there was mention of asking how quickly somebody wants to develop it. And that might actually be one thing in terms of, I don't have a lot of interest in terms of controlling what develops there, but I don't know if I love the idea of the city sells the land for somebody else just to sit on it for an indeterminate amount of time. So that might be one thing in the point of expression of interest instead of a straight sale process that wasn't mentioned earlier, and I don't know where that makes me land on this, but Councillor Clayton. Sorry, you're muted, Councillor Clayton.
Yep, sorry, thanks. In order to get this conversation to council, I think that the easiest way is to put the recommendation forward as presented. The only comment that I will make is that it doesn't say recommends council. So I'm wondering maybe a question for Director Glavin. Should it just say, the motion say that the Infrastructure and Economic Development Committee recommends to council that an expression of an interest to explore the sale is proposed, whatever you want. I guess, oh, sorry, I lied. The last sentence there says for council consideration. My apologies. So I'll just move that the recommendation as presented.
Great. Mayor Gibbon.
Yeah, so Councillor Clayton, your first instinct was right. I think the way the recommendation is phrased, it actually doesn't do what you're intending to do. I think it should be that the committee recommend council approve an expression of interest. The way that it's phrased right now is committee's approving the expression of interest, and then the results show up at council.
Oh, true.
So
yeah,
I think what you're wanting to do is move the whole thing forward to council for consideration, and it's council's choice of whether or not to issue the expression of interest.
That's exactly it. Thank you.
I'm just gonna ask our recording secretary. I'm not sure if that's I'm not sure who's recording today. I only got my video participants up, but is that clear for the minutes? What motion we're considering right now?
Thank you, Chair Bressie. It is clear. I'm good with that one.
Great, thank you. Well, in that case, we do have a motion on the table. Is there any discussion or debate on this motion? Mayor Gibbon, and then Councillor Thiessen.
Yeah, so I'll say that I will support the motion. In that there's an opportunity for council to test the market, see what's out there. If at council there is a desire to change to a straight sale, I would vehemently vote against that. And I will make an observation for council. The land immediately south of this is far better and far more developable. You know, this has been cleared, appears to be flatter, appears to have less wetland. It has been in private hands and zoned for commercial development for easily a decade. And the market hasn't been there, it hasn't jumped up. And so the idea that if we just get this off our books for the sake of getting off our books and something will happen relatively soon, I think that that's probably, I would be very surprised by that, given how long the land immediately south has sat. And so, you know, I am open to exploring opportunities. I think it'd be great to have some economic development. If there's somebody who's ready to build something, then that's great. But I'm going to be weighing off those opportunities with the environmental benefit of having this, the community benefit of having some open natural spaces. And I want an opportunity to weigh those different values. I think our community would appreciate taking those different values into consideration rather than just saying it's a financial decision, sell it. So happy to get it to council, but certainly at council, if it wasn't an expression of interest and was just a sale, that would be something I would not support at council.
Great. Councillor Thiessen.
Thanks, Chair Bressie. I think Mayor Gibbon was reading my notes. I was going to talk about the land south of it and also the environmental benefits that that area still provides to our community, whether we're aware of it or not. In saying all that, I'm going to go the opposite direction, and I'm going to put pressure on our committee to make a decision and put me at the other end of it. I'm not going to vote in support of this, although I am in support of an expression of interest and not a direct sale. Again, just as the mayor said, if this were to change at council to a direct sale, I might be right off the books. And the reason why is I do have concerns about the environmental aspects, the health of that wetland and how it's managed. Also to the developer who's going to pick it up and buy it. They may get the land at a small price if we direct sale it, but then, you know, when they get into the environmental stuff, you know, they might find that they're handcuffed like we've had other developers in this community. So the cost to develop and buy is a concern for me, as well as the healthy management and water storage and the ecological function of the wetlands. So for all those reasons, I'm going to vote no today. And see if it goes as a 3-1, and then we can have this discussion at council. I'm not opposed to that, but I think if we're going to go through this process, we should be holding hands with the developers or the prospective purchasers and walking them through it. And I have total faith in our administration to be able to do that and make that crystal clear for them. Yeah, we'll go from there. So thanks, Bill, and thank you everyone for listening. But I'm going to vote no.
Any other conversation on this motion? Great. In that case, I'll call to question. So all in favor? And opposed? Great. And that motion carries. And then moving on to item 1.3, which is disposition of land on Montrose South. And again, that's Mr. Saladay and Sheldon.
Again, so we're bringing forward a proposal of expression of interest for the south portion of Montrose. So Montrose is the parcel of land located on 98th Avenue Street, and houses the Montrose Cultural Centre. The southern portion of this land is approximately 4.32 acres and is currently undeveloped. It's zoned central commercial. In 2016, the city done a master plan for this site, which identified a performance art center on the southeast portion. We're looking to bring forward the southwest portion of this land, which is comprised of 2.16 acres. Again, we're looking to do an expression of interest to explore the disposition of this land. Take any questions from you.
I see Mayor Given, then Councillor Thiessen.
So in contrast to the last one, I'm very excited about bringing this one forward. I have a concern though about the report and the lot layout that's presented. In the report, it identifies that the South Montrose master plan is sort of a guiding document for the EOI, and the diagram and sort of lot layout as it's described in the images is not consistent with the 2017 master plan. The image that's shown there that shows the colored image that shows pedestrian hub, greenway, performing arts center is actually a diagram from the 2014 plan that was greatly revised in the 2016 plan. So the 2016 plan in that was the only illustration that administration could have picked that showed a square lot. Every other illustration in the South Montrose master plan actually shows a triangular shaped lot. And I appreciate that it would present challenges in terms of developability, but the plan's pretty explicit that there's an intention of having a public gathering space that opens to the south. So I'm curious about administration's decision to include those diagrams when they really are, first off, from 2014 and greatly revised in the 2016 plan.
Is there somebody from administration who's able to speak to that?
Sure, I'll speak through the chair on that because that was my decision, which was clearly an oversight. I wasn't personally aware of the 2017 diagram, so I went right back to the original master plan. So that's my oversight.
So I'm just wondering if council did decide to take action on this, or if committee did decide to send this to council for Monday, would there be any issues with having this revised before a council meeting, or how long would that take if committee wanted to see it revised with those updated diagrams? Sorry, I've got everybody frozen. I'm not sure if it's me or you folks.
No. Okay.
Oh, all right. Some of you are moving now. So yeah, I'm just kind of curious in terms of moving this process forward. It seems that if committee wants to take action on this, it would be important to have the updated diagram. So would there be any issues with having it updated by Monday if committee wanted to send this to council? And I see Director Glavin.
Thanks, Chair Bressie. Given that this could be a little more of a significant change, it might be better to bring the report back in its entirety to committee to ensure everybody's deliberating on the same thing at the same time, rather than try to amend the report between now and council. But we can do whatever committee or council would like us to do.
Okay, great. I see. Mayor Given, why don't I, since you kind of got this going, I'll let you jump in before I move to others.
Sure. Well, so one thing we could do if others are, would like to see what this would look like if it actually conformed with the most recent plan, maybe it would just be direction to administration to, refer back to administration with a request to revise in conformance with the 2016 master plan. And then bring it back. I'm not trying to delay. I really do want to see this out and see what sort of things the community could come forward with it. But we took a really extensive process there, and I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that this is in alignment with that really forward-looking process. So I think it's a refer back to administration, make sure it conforms, bring it back, and let's get it through to council.
Councillor Black, I'll do Councillor Clayton, then Councillor Blackburn.
Thanks, Chair Bressie. yeah, I agree that it's a different conversation with the correct drawings, and so I think that it's best for it to come back to committee for discussion. Thanks.
Councillor Blackburn, then Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you, Councillor Bressie. I'm scouring through this document and I'm not finding it, but I seem to recall when I was reading it the other day that the sale of this property and its redevelopment would also involve the necessity to remove a parking lot and replace it somewhere else. And I'm wondering if there's much in the way of a financial impact to having to do that. So in the revised report, I wonder if there could be some reference to that.
Mr. Halliday.
Through the chair there, Director Glavin may be able to speak more on this, but I do believe that the old school board building is slated to be demolished, and there is plans to turn that into parking, which is where the provincial parking would be relocated.
City Manager Galante.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, that is correct. We have a contractual obligation with the courthouse, and the intent would be, at least for now, to provide the necessary parking using the soon-to-be demolished building. I provided an update a few days ago to council, so you will see that building being demolished in the next few weeks, and initially we'll utilize that parking to replace the southwest corner of the Montrose hub. Thank you.
Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Chair Bressie. I actually had similar concerns to the mayor in regards to the original planning of the site, but I was looking at attachment 1, where the blue rectangular box sort of infringes upon the greenway, and I wasn't sure if we were disposing of that as well. You know, our already developed greenway path, and that we might lose part of that if we were to sell it. So I think that's a consideration. Just to administration, I think you might have it. I know I have a copy in my office, but the Montrose site, when the architects and engineers put that together, it's pretty thick reading. It's about that thick, diagrams and stuff. But yeah, it does clearly lay it out, and I would be comfortable with that. But I am really excited about putting out this offer of interest and entertaining that. But definitely, as long as it conforms with the plan and you know, it doesn't. And it salvages what we've already done rather than give it away. So, yeah, I'd be all in favor. I wasn't sure if Bill's motion was a motion. Yeah, that's right, Bill. Yeah. It sounded like it was a motion, but I'm all in favor for sending this back and then seeing the new plan as it conforms. So, thank you.
So I'm gonna confess my ignorance and not knowing that plan as well as I should. I wasn't on council when it was developed, and this is really the first time that our council's touched the site. So I've got some reading before me, but something I wonder is, I definitely support this coming back to committee with some updated information. But something I do wonder is if we do move forward with an expression of interest, how restrictive we want to be based on that plan, just in terms of the plan is reliant on this Performing Arts and Conference Center, and if we're only doing an expression of interest, assuming that conference center is going forward, when we're also having conversation about Revolution Place, I wonder if we should do that. So I'm looking forward to seeing that plan and doing some more homework, but I just hate to say, hey, we're only considering selling this or partnering with a developer on this land in such a way that works with the Performing Arts Center. And so it's going to be an interesting conversation when we get back. But I see some people who maybe know that plan better than I do with some substantial thoughts, so I'll let them get in a minute, but I'll go to Councillor Plott first.
Thanks, Councillor Bressie. I do like the idea of the plan coming back. I think that's a good idea to have all the same working information. I guess for me, though, back to, I think we get a little bit prescriptive. So looking on the one drawing where it's got the pink box where it's like mixed use building, that's what we were talking about selling. So would we really not sell to a proponent if they wanted where the Civic Square was and we could reverse it to that? Like, we get so prescriptive on these things, and I can appreciate we need to have a plan. But to Councillor Bressie's point, we don't know if a Performing Arts Center is ever going to go there. And if a building came in and said, hey, I'd love to be on the corner of 98th Street and 101st Ave, that's where I'd really like to be. Wouldn't that be an amazing thing for our community to have a nice visible building on a corner that we're struggling to clean up that corner of the city? And we're going to stagnate it with a piece of land that may never, ever, ever be built. And so I'm really struggling with, if this land's for sale, let's set aside, it's all for sale. And when we're just going to leave enough aside for a future performing arts center. They can go anywhere on that site. And so I'm struggling with why we want to be so prescriptive of what exact square is expression for interest. To me, there's a lot of acres there. It's all for sale. And we're going to carve out enough to make sure we keep a performing arts center and a civic square. That's fine. But industry may not want the location we're going to force them to try to have. And visibly for our community, having a beautiful building going up on 98th Street and 101st Street would sure help that corner of the city and the downtown. So I'd love to have a conversation about that at some point. I don't know where that enters, and maybe it's when this map gets updated and council gets forward with it. But for me, I'd have a huge appetite to have a conversation about getting not so prescriptive on this site. So my food for thought. Thanks.
I saw some facial expressions. I'm not sure if I know who wants to actually get in the queue. Oh, Councillor O'Toole and then Councillor Thiessen.
So thanks very much, Mr. Bressi, for allowing me to speak. I know I was on council last term and the term before that, and this is a very controversial piece of property throughout the city. Many beliefs. This is the last part of Grande Prairie, basically, that hasn't had structures on it in a long time. It's a blank piece of carpet, you might say, and we can build what we want. And I know we had a South Montrose advisory committee, and at one time we were talking about putting a transit terminal here. And all I'm telling you is when we start bringing this topic up, you think we have concerns about face masks, you wait till we start bringing this up. So you should do, and I mean this for all of council, we should look at the report that we had back then and kind of read it page for page, because there's a lot of insight, a lot of history here. And this is, like I said, this is a big deal here in the city. And I don't want us to, I don't want council to take it half-heartedly and just say, well, let's sell some of this stuff. It's a big deal. It means a lot to a lot of people historically. And one of the concerns that when we had this plan set up, the building that we're talking about, the land that we're talking about, had height restrictions, and it had to have a certain amount of light coming into the building. We didn't want to have any darkness. We wanted to show off that piece of property. There's a lot of stuff that was talked about, stuff that I really wasn't too concerned about. But when it was brought up and the arguments were said, I can tell you that it kind of changed my way of thinking as well. And this is the piece of property that City of Grande Prairie is going to be proud of. We want to do it right the first time. And that's all I got to say. I'm not going to commit to anything other than this is a very important piece of property throughout the people of Grande Prairie in different walks of life. And we need to take this, whatever we do here, we have to take it really serious. So I'm okay with selling the piece of property to the land developer for sure. But just the discussions of where the Performing Arts Center was, that was huge. And where this building, one of the things was it was going to be a business type building with maybe high-end apartments with lots of glass and maybe some commercial property on the bottom. That was one of the things that council suggested that we put there. So at that, I'll end my talking and get back to the discussion with the rest of the committee. Thank you.
Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you, Chair Bressi, and amen, Brother O'Toole. Yeah, you actually were reading off my note list too, because I was writing that there is a purpose for that southwest corner of that lot that was discussed ad nauseum, actually, between the public and council and various community groups and administration. And that was, yeah, we don't want that building to be too high. There's a reason to the triangle portion of it. It serves as a partial wind block as well as shadow lines to what could be a future public gathering space, like just to the west of what could be the Performing Arts Center. But of course, that's a discussion for another day. So thank you for that, Councillor O'Toole. Just to respond to Councillor Palat, I think we can chunk off parts of the land, but I'm very much in favor of what Kevin said in regards that we've put a lot of time and thought and energy and money into this site, and we want to develop it properly the first time. And I don't know if we get that if we chunk it off. I also don't know if we get the purchasers if we're too prescriptive as to what needs to go in the building or how that is. I think we need to give them sort of their lot layout and then go from there. I too am torn on whether or not the Performing Arts Center actually belongs in that corner, but that, like I said, is a discussion for another day. But I do think that, yeah, if we do something with that southeast corner of the lot, we could really make our city pop in the center core, whether that's building a large community garden similar to Jubilee Park, it's just as a central gathering space for a potential purchaser on the southwest corners building and all the other downtown buildings, or we stick with the plan and we do a Performing Arts Center at some point in the future. But I don't know if we chunk off that. Right now we're discussing the southwest corner, and I do think that we need to stick to the plan here, and there was a lot of thought and suggestions that went into making it the way it was. And if anybody wants to look at it, it's an over 200-page book, literally. It's in my office. I'm sure the mayor has a copy and administration has copies too, so I can share that out if you need.
Great. I see Councillor Clayton, then Mayor Given, then Councillor Plott.
Thanks, Chair Bressie. You know, at this point, there's a recommendation sort of there in front of us. I think as a committee, we've discussed the fact that bringing back the presentation with the appropriate and correct information would be beneficial to the discussion. A couple of things. I really like the EOI on this one because of the fact that from what I'm hearing, we are torn on what the overall plan is. Even though there was an approved South Montrose site master plan last term, and a lot of public consultation went into it, a lot of council thought went into it. End of the day though, over time, things change. The EOI will allow us for more public consultation. And so to get this motion forward, I think, you know, we bring back the correct information. I will never proclaim to be a developer. But I do think that people need to have an opportunity for consultation. Council needs to have a conversation around it with the correct information, and then we can just move on to the next step. Thanks.
And then I'll just highlight. Thank you to administration for putting a link to that plan in the report. So if you've got the PDF in the second paragraph under background, you can click it and you can see the plan that everybody's referencing. Just if somebody else is wondering how to access it, thank you to administration for making sure that's in there. Mayor Given and then Councillor Palat.
Yeah, so I am, you know, we can make a motion, then we can debate the actual motion.
Sure.
You know, and it's just going to be referred to administration. So I'd move that the committee direct administration revise the South Montrose EOI to conform with the 2016 South Montrose master plan, period. And so set it back to administration, revise it, make sure it conforms, and then naturally they would bring it back. And when it comes back in conformance with that plan, I'd be happy to support getting it forward to council. I just wanted to address one thing, Councillor Bressie. For me, certainly, the use of this corner of the site is not contingent upon the future use of the opposite corner, the east side, in the Performing Arts Center. It's, you know, I think the plan is intended to be a long-range plan that describes what can happen over a large number of years, intended to have some future direction for the city. I think the one thing that is that the plan suggests is fixed is the idea that there will be a public gathering space in the center of that south part of the Montrose site.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily say that it does actually. It does say the future public facility will be a performing arts center, but that's subject to some council someday deciding that they want to go ahead with that. That doesn't, in my mind, delay or prevent somebody from doing something else on this other side, on the west side that we're talking about. So for me, it's not contingent upon. You know, it'll be interesting to see how the development community will view this and view that opportunity when they get a chance to express an opinion on it.
Yeah, and I think that I'd really agree with that in terms of I really do believe that there needs to be a central gathering point and that needs to be preserved. And I really do agree that it's worth doing an expression of interest process to see what happens on this northwest side of the lot on that triangular piece. I just wonder if it's also worth doing an expression of interest to see if there's any interest building where that Performing Arts Center is slated, while still preserving that central gathering spot. So I wonder if I really support this expression of interest, Kings Council. I wonder if there might be value in doing more than this expression of interest as well. But I think that at the same time, I really support the motion you made today, and I think that's a great discussion that we can have at the next committee meeting where this comes forward. Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Councillor Bressy. I think that the thing that I want to highlight here is I think this is really tweaked that this council's never spoke about this plan. And although there was a lot of work going into it, and I love that Councillor O'Toole there is always reminding me of the history of the new guy on the block, but that's 10 years ago. I mean, I was part of the library board 10 years ago when this was being discussed. A lot changes in 10 years. And so I'm just worried sometimes that we get stagnated on a plan that happened 10 years. Yes, there was lots of dialogue, lots of things. But the real estate market, our downtown market, has changed a lot. And, you know, this conversation, like from bus barns, everything has went around and around. I guess my concern is, and I love getting this to council so we can say, hey, let's have an expression of interest, let's protect some green space. But again, because we've got prescriptive on this site, I don't know how we necessarily move forward if a developer come and said, I only want to be in the southeast corner. I just think we're setting ourselves up for a problem because we're stuck to this plan. And I love the plan, but those boxes can move around on that plan pretty easily. So I'm looking forward to this getting to council, but I'd actually like us to have a real conversation about the Performing Arts Center, because if we're not doing it, we're actually stagnating a very beautiful piece of land, and we're not thinking about what else opportunities we could have there and where else Performing Arts Center might be a good fit. And maybe it isn't the right fit here. I personally think there's a lot better location for Performing Arts Center than that. I've always been concerned about that location, but until we have a conversation about that, it stays on this plan forever now because it was a conversation started 10 years ago, and that worries me. I think it's great to have conversations, but I think eventually you really do need to step up, and every council might have to readdress these top ones. Revolution Place is another one. We're going to have a conversation in November about a building for $70 million or $55 million. I just think this council hasn't had enough opportunities to talk about these major projects and major impacts they have on the community. So it's something I'd love to see us have very guided conversations about these major land plays at some point in our term.
Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Chair Bressy. I'm all ready to vote on the motion as presented, but I'm just going to push back a little bit on Councillor Palat here, because I don't believe that green space area with the choppy grass is stagnated. In fact, last year alone, we celebrated the Rotary Rib Fest out on that site. We've also done the Children's Festival out on that site, as well as the GP Highland Games. So throughout the summer, that was a very well-used and high-profile location, still sitting undeveloped, that was used by the community. So just because it's bare doesn't mean it's underutilized or stagnant. The community's finding ways to use it and to use it for their own betterment by raising awareness for people by being on a highly visible corridor. So I would push back on that. I do agree, though, we shouldn't get overly prescriptive on the southwest corner, and maybe the boxes might be able to move around, but I just think the functionality for the community is there versus, saying, oh, now you can do it in this parking lot. Because if we don't change up that parking lot, people have nowhere to gather in that space while we're waiting to develop it.
Great, thank you. Well, we do have a motion on the table to bring this back to committee with some updated information. So is there any other conversation about the motion that's on the table? In that case, I'll call it to question. All in favor? And that motion carries. And is there any other business with this item? Great. Well, then moving on to item 1.4, we've got a draft transportation master plan with Mr. Hutchinson.
Good morning, Chair Bressy, councillors, and everybody else. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to present the final report for the transportation master plan. Shane, would it be possible for me to share screen?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. There we go. So, City Administration are presenting this report. Can everybody see the presentation there? Yeah, okay, thank you. So City Administration are presenting this report. The recommendation coming out of this report is that Civil Administration would like committee to recommend Council adopt the Transportation Master Plan 2020 by resolution and direct administration to review and bring back any amendments to the Transportation Off-Site Levy bylaw, the Transportation System bylaw, and the Municipal Government Plan as required. I should start off by saying that what you're about to see here is a distilled version of the presentation that was made by the consultant, McElhaney Consultant, to Council June 2019. So I'm not going to go into detail in the recommendations. They are unchanged from what was previously presented to Council. I would like to start off by giving you a little bit of background as to what a Transportation Master Plan is and why we need to update it. I would then go on to talk about the considerable stakeholder engagement that has been undertaken as part of this update. I will then talk a little bit about the road network analysis, and particularly about the recommendations coming out for the 3 population horizons that we've modelled. That is when the city's population reaches 70,000, 90,000, and 120,000 population, and then we've identified some long-term recommended upgrades for the beyond 120,000 population, although that wasn't modelled. I will then briefly touch on the other areas of the Transportation Master Plan that were reviewed before taking any questions at the end there. So without further ado, what is a Transportation Master Plan? Well, Transportation Master Plan is a strategic planning document. It is a legislated requirement under provisional law that we are supposed to have a Transportation Master Plan. Now, the current Transportation Master Plan goes back to 2009, and it doesn't reflect any of the developments or transportation changes that have occurred since 2009. There's a need to identify the infrastructure needs for the future development and population growth. We also need to make sure that City Administration is maintaining the focus on what are the public priorities and making sure that we're heading in the same direction. As mentioned, the Transportation Master Plan impacts other strategic planning documents that would also need to be updated. And it helps to identify and prioritize the budget requirements for infrastructure upgrades over the next 5 years. I mentioned that this Transportation Master Plan has had considerable stakeholder engagement. This started in December 2017 with a pre-engagement survey. We canvassed the opinion of the city residents and asked them, how would you like to be involved during the upgrade of this Transportation Master Plan? This was followed up in January 2018 with an online survey asking them specifically what upgrades would they like to see and what areas of concerns they have with the current transportation network in the city. We also had an open house in January 2018. This was followed up in March 2018 with focused stakeholder meetings, and I'll talk a little bit about those on the next slide. In having heard the public feedback about their concerns or recommendations for improvements, we followed this up in June 2018 with another online survey with some of the feedback that we'd received. We had another open house, and we also held a booth at Municipal Government Day where we had the opportunity to interact directly with members of the public. In 2019, we wrapped up the recommendations, and we presented these to the focused stakeholder meetings. And in June 2019, there was a presentation of these recommendations to Council, as well as other stakeholder meetings and another booth at Municipal Government Day where we could talk to members of the public. Now, I mentioned that there were some focused stakeholder meetings. These included the province, the Trucking Association, CANFOR, city councillors. We also have meetings with the county, CN Rail, the emergency services, the Chamber of Commerce, the college, the school districts, UDI, and various city administration departments. The main feedback we received from the stakeholder engagement was that generally there was most concern expressed about congestion and road capacity. There was also useful feedback with regards to missing sidewalks and trail connectiveness, and there was a need that we need to improve the trails and sidewalks. There was a lot of concern about the apparent lack of signal coordination along various corridors. Members of the public also identified some areas where they felt that it was unsafe to drive. There was some feedback with regards to the truck routes around the city and ways to improve those. In addition, we had a lot of feedback with regards to delays at rail crossings, and questions were asked about what improvements we could make at the rail crossings. Into the road network analysis, as I say, we looked at 3 population horizons. This is the first population horizon. What this map is showing you is the areas in beige here are where the city's planning department forecast that this growth will likely to occur in order to reach the 70,000 population, and we're not far off there now. So the orange shown in the network is where we're likely to see peak hour mild congestion, and the red is where the level of congestion is above 80% of capacity. And we can see that just west of Staples Corner is during peak time the most congested area. The network model and the consultants then identified a number of road improvements. Again, these have already been presented to council, so I don't intend to go through these in detail. We can see a number of intersections there that require local improvement. There's also, we've added the Northwest Ring Road that wasn't in the previous transportation master plan, and there's some other local road improvements there. If we implement these road improvements, we see that we can reduce the worst of the congestion, which is at Staples Corner, but we will still see during peak time some mild congestion on other parts of the network. Now moving to the 90,000 population, and again, our planning departments estimated that this growth is likely to occur in the areas shown in green here. And as we can see, if we input the populations and developments into the model there, we can see that we have 3 areas of the city that will experience significant congestion. Again, as with the 70,000 population, the consultant identified a number of road improvements and infrastructure improvements that should be implemented by the time the city's population reaches 90,000. These are shown in here, and as I say, I don't want to go into detail because these have been presented previously. If we do implement these changes, then we can see that we can take out some of the congestion, although not all of the congestion. And certainly on 108th Street around the college, the restriction there is the fact that it would require a wider bridge there. You know, at the moment, we've got 2 lanes in each direction, so that would require a 6-lane bridge if we wanted to mitigate that level of congestion there. Moving on to the 120,000 population, and this is likely to occur or forecast to occur in the areas shown in blue here, so on the periphery of the city. And we can see that if we put this population into the model, we're seeing significant areas where the expected peak time population is expected to exceed 80% of the capacity of the road. As before, the consultant identified a number of upgrades. These are shown in blue and are listed in the table on the left here. If we can implement those changes and adopt them, then again, we would still see some areas where the volume to capacity ratio exceeds 80%. We've got Wapiti Road here and a section of 68th Avenue. Moving on to the beyond 120,000 population, this is shown here. This wasn't modeled, but given the growth that we're expected to see in the county and in various parts of the city, it was felt that We would need to see more connectivity of an outer ring road, and certain arterial roads would have to be upgraded to 4 lanes. Others would need to be upgraded to 6 lanes. Moving on to other parts of the Transportation Master Plan, I mentioned that the public had expressed concerns about perceived safety at certain locations. These were plotted on the map here, and we've identified these where the red are pedestrian concerns about pedestrian safety, and the blue are vehicle concerns about road safety. This was useful in understanding the public's perception of road safety. My team and I are looking at improvements to road safety, but we're actually prioritized based on where we're seeing collisions occur rather than what the feedback is we're getting from the public. So this is a useful map, but it's not directing where we focus our resources in terms of improving road safety. Another part of the Transportation Master Plan talks about the active transportation and transit. The document actually includes some large plans for each part of the city. This is just one section of the city, of the downtown, the northwest section there. And it highlights some opportunities to improve the trails and pathways, where we see the orange there is some gaps in trails and pathways. There are opportunities for improved active transportation hubs, possible locations for transit hub opportunities. As I say, this is shown in more detail within the document itself. Other areas that were reviewed as part of the Transportation Master Plan include the truck routes. And I briefly spoke about this over the last couple of weeks when we're looking at the traffic system, the traffic engineering bylaw, where the recommendation was to remove the truck routes in the downtown. There was considerable support for extending the truck route down 116th Street. And in the long term, there's been a desire to build a flyover or something at 84th Avenue over Resources Road. That flyover has been identified in previous transportation master plans, so it's not a new concept there. That is the end of my presentation. I'm now able to take any questions.
Great. Well, thank you for the presentation, and thank you. I know this is literally years of work that went into this, so thank you to you and your team and our consultants who put in a tremendous amount of work in this. Just looking at our community council, I'm sure there's a few questions. Who's got them first? Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Chair Bressie, and thank you very much, Mr. Hutchinson, for the report and for all the hard work that you put into this. I guess my question, I'm looking at the transit master plan right now on the city website. On page 77 of 305, figure 424 shows a change in traffic volume for the proposed projects. Now, it appears that, I guess my first question is, this is like the traffic pattern now or what we anticipate it to be after growth?
The model, through the chair, the model shows that what the traffic patterns will likely be should the growth occur at the locations that were identified by the planning department.
Okay. Yeah, because I guess now Councillor Platt has brought this up a couple times about turning lanes along 92nd. And part of me is a little bit concerned, hoping you can alleviate that we're not seeking to upgrade 92nd Street until we hit the 120K population. But it's turning into a busier and busier road every day as people try to avoid the center hub and the traffic lights, and they come through there, especially during peak hours. Now, where traffic really gets clogged is like the left turn of the buses into the residential area of Countryside North, as well as, you know, there's any other vehicles that are turning there. And it sort of forces people to drive on the shoulder of the road and sometimes do a bit of off-roading as well. I guess my question is, in the meantime, in the interim, while we wait to get to that 120,000 population before we 4-lane this road, have we put in any considerations of adding turn lanes at key points on this road and/or lights, like street lights along 92nd as well? Because, so I guess turn lanes in the interim and lights, I'm just bringing up off the top, I had it in my notes, but a lot of people have called over the years and said that when it gets dark, it's especially hard to see on there. And I've traveled that road quite frequently myself, and most people are riding with their brights, which in a narrow lane with minimal shoulderage on the side roads, it can be kind of dangerous. And sometimes you're just wishing and praying it as you pass cars along that road late at night, especially on a new moon. But anyways, turning lanes and lights.
And I see Director Glavin popping in.
Thanks, Chair Bressy. Maybe I'll take a little pressure off Robin here. So those upgrades, we actually are considering not as part of a twinning project, but as part of a geometric improvement for the turning lane. So what you're going to likely see this year is a mill infill in that area that's not going to include the turning lane, but we are looking at now including that in a future geometric upgrade. It won't happen this year, but we're looking at it as part of that program over the next couple years. That doesn't solve the lights issue, but that is something we're looking at to improve the traffic flow in that particular area.
Awesome. Thank you. And I guess along the lights, I appreciate that, Director Glavin. That puts my mind at ease, and I can't wait to tell the residents of those neighborhoods that, yeah, this could be coming along with these geometric upgrades sooner than you think. The lights, is that our responsibility along 92nd, or is it the developers who are building out Riverstone there? I would imagine it would be ours.
Through the chair, if I may. So I'm just getting some responses, some very useful information here from Christine in engineering. First of all, I would say that the upgrades and the timing of the upgrades really depends upon the development and when it occurs. The timelines shown in my presentation and modeled by the consultant were the best guess at the time when we were creating the model. Should the developments occur, let's say, out of sync with what we expected, then that would obviously mean that we wouldn't invest in infrastructure upgrades unless they were required, but it also means that it may accelerate the amount of development should some development occur quicker or sooner than expected. And the response I'm getting from Christine, thank you, Christine, is that streetlights are our responsibility.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. Thank you.
I see Councillor Plott, just to insert, is this on 92 Street or something different, Councillor Plott?
That was another one, so.
Well, why don't I get to you? Why don't you share 92nd Street? I got some thoughts on 92nd Street, so why don't I let you, so just my thought on this topic is, I hear a lot of concerns about 92nd Street, and I wonder if some work that we might want to consider directing administration to do is to bring back a written report on the future plans for 92 Street with those financial considerations, with those time constraints. It's great to ask this verbally here, but I hear enough concerns here that it would be really nice to be able to show an actual written report to residents about what's going on there. And so I'm comfortable with what I'm hearing from administration, but I'd like to have some ability to show my work. So maybe that's some direction we want to consider giving administration later in this meeting. Councillor Plott.
Thanks, Chair Bressy. I'm glad that Councillor Thiessen brought it up because, yeah, 92nd Street does get a lot of attention, and I feel like it is a corridor that if we would put some money into, we'd take a lot of pressure off of some other roads. A lot of schools have went up in that area in the last 10 years, and a lot of traffic tries to diverts around that train track. So I really like the comment that Councillor Bressy made about maybe a report. Maybe this comes back and it's like 132nd up when we had the concerns with Lakeland, that we needed lights, and then we got all the information back showing, you know, other than maybe a half an hour morning, a half an hour at supper time, that area wasn't as bad as it looked. But my eyeball test on 92nd's never been great, and maybe I'm just traveling it at the peak times, but it does feel like I think we do owe the community in that area more than just we're going to put some millings in, we're going to kind of limp it along. Watching a transit bus park on the side of the road on grass that was grass at one point, I should say, but is now kind of gravel. Watching it park there, knowing how many people in that area use that transit is a little disheartening. So I'd love to see a report come back on that too. So it would be great if this committee could put something like that forward. Unfortunately, I can't, but I appreciate you throwing out there, Councillor Bressy. My only other question was on the consulting. I guess it's Mr. Hutchinson. Looking on the report, and I believe you kind of mentioned that you come back, but my concern is seems like there's almost a year gap from when we said we were consulting to now. And I'm just wondering, have we went back to school boards, UDI, we went back and had that final discussion of here's the final draft and made sure we had their last comments put in before this came to committee, just seeing that there's a fairly large gap in kind of the windows of dates to today.
Through the chair, you're absolutely right. It's regrettable that it has taken a year since the final report was presented to council, and we have, as I say, liaised with the stakeholders we identified there, and it took some time for the consultant to amend, make the changes into the final report that it was of an acceptable format. We tried to, or wanted to present the report to committee earlier in the year, but regrettably, circumstances beyond our control meant that it had to be delayed until now. So, ideally, we would have liked to bring it sooner, but it is what it is.
So, if I'm understanding, there was conversations with school boards and UDI that they've had their input, they've had their conversations with you guys, and that you guys have followed up with them on everything to bring this report to committee today.
Yes, the final conversations we had with the school boards and the other stakeholders was essentially the presentation as made to council. It was more a case of having consulted the various bodies. This is what we heard, and we've incorporated those concerns into the report and analysed the traffic flows, etc. And then those were incorporated into the report. So it's not as if UDI or any of the other stakeholders made any further requests. So the report hasn't essentially been updated, or any of the recommendations haven't been updated in the last year.
Okay, but they had an opportunity to put in their comments or questions, and the plan was either updated with those considerations or not, and they've been notified. That I just want to confirm that, I guess, because they did have a couple different organizations reach out to say that they wish they would have a little more consulting, but that's pretty common. A lot of people think that they haven't been heard enough, and so I just want to make sure that they have been heard and that that you're comfortable with the process moving forward.
Through the chair, if I may, I would say that the level of stakeholder engagement that we undertook for this TMP was far more than we'd ever done before with any of the other TMPs. We've had public open houses, we've had opportunities to meet and talk with the public. We've also identified individual stakeholders, and as I say, I personally have presented with UDI at least twice during the discussions or preparation of this TMP, and yes, we have incorporated their comments and given them feedback, and they have been incorporated into the report, yes.
Okay, great, I appreciate that, thank you.
Great. Mayor Given.
Thanks very much, and thanks, Robin, for all your work in the presentation today. I wonder if you could just give us a little bit more detail on a couple of aspects, specifically related to rail crossings. There was I think a request to look at the big idea of overpass at 84th Avenue. I can see what it says in the plan, and maybe I just wonder if you could speak to that a little bit, as well as 112th, or sorry, maybe it's 110th. But the industrial park crossing, that's one that had been budgeted for by council in the past. And so can you speak to those two specifically, about what their status in the plan is, and then maybe just a little bit generally what the plan says about rail crossing improvements?
Through the chair, starting off with the 84th Avenue flyover over the rail crossing there. As I say, this has been identified. It was certainly in the last TMP of 2009 and I believe it was even in the previous TMP before that. So it has been identified as a long-term desire. One of the concerns that the consultants did flag up was the fact that our road network is built on mile grid, and if we are looking at the movement of goods from east to west, we have 68th Avenue, and then the next possibility for goods to move from east and west north of 68th Avenue is 100th Avenue. So it would be desirable to reduce the congestion on both of those corridors if we could actually have a midpoint at, say, 84th Avenue to have a flyover over the rail lines there. Now, because I believe we have 7 rail lines at that location, it would be a considerable structure and almost cost prohibitive, to be honest. We would ideally wait until CN had established that their existing rail yard is too small for their needs, and they moved out, and therefore we could have put a much smaller structure in, or even an at-grade structure. So the idea for a rail crossing over at 84th Avenue is essentially to reduce the congestion on 100th Avenue and 68th Avenue. And to fill in those gaps within the mile grid. Now, you spoke about a 112th Street crossing. Again, this has been identified previously in the previous tram station master plan. Where are we with regards to making that push through of 112th Street? I understand that Lafarge have a plant there, and in its current state, it would be quite expensive for the city to make that connection through 112th Street. So it really comes down to when funds become available, and also, is there another alternative? So it would be desirable to have that push through 112th Street. So I'm getting a message through as I'm talking. So Christine's helping me out here. So yes, it is something that we're looking at, but because of the Lafarge plant, it's a little difficult at this moment in time. I'm hoping I've responded to that question. Christine's still typing, so. Oh, the spare line. Sorry. Yeah, okay. She's just agreeing with what I said about the spare line for 112th. Thank you, Christine.
And then generally, Robin, on the other at-grade crossings that exist, one concern that we hear from residents is safety, but also noise and controls at those crossings, and the potential to, if controls are implemented, to reduce train whistling. Does this plan speak about implementing controls that would have any impact on that?
Through the chair, the Transportation Master Plan is a much higher document. It's a strategic document talking about future development and transportation needs. Whilst we did hear a lot of concerns about train whistling and delays at certain at-grade crossings, the Transportation Master Plan doesn't really get into the detail of how to address those particular issues at those local sites. So we in administration identify it is an ongoing issue, but it's not really something that's covered by the Transportation Master Plan.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Minhas.
Thank you, Mayor Milgibbon. You covered my question about Fly and 112, those two. But I got one I'm wondering, don't get it, this one, maybe clarification. What about 84th Street from 132 to 100th Street, 100th Street to 100 Avenue to 68th Avenue? If that access will cover a lot of traffic, that's probably long term. I don't know when it's going to happen. It doesn't show, or I don't see it. That they call the Range Road 51 on the county side, but our is 84th Street become in the future when the growth goes. It'll be 120 population or 90,000 population we need to build that road. So that will take a lot of pressure from 92, because 92 is not a straight road. It just goes to 116, then it goes to the Lakeland and screwed up everything. So if that shows in the master plan, I initiate something, but I don't get it.
Through the chair, you're absolutely right that over in the east here, there is a recommendation to improve the arterial road network in the east there. It is, how to say, development driven, and should that development occur before the 120,000 population, then that road will naturally be upgraded to accommodate the traffic at that time. One thing, again, I would say is in adopting the Transportation Master Plan, these aren't timelines that are set in concrete. You know, it's our best estimate as to what could occur in the future. So by adopting the Transportation Master Plan, we're saying here's a high-level review of what could happen. Should the development occur at different timelines, then obviously we will prioritize upgrades at those locations as and when required. So, and certainly there is a lot of interest in that 84th Street extension in the east there. But from what we're seeing at this moment in time, it's unlikely to occur before we get to 120,000 population.
Thank you. So.
Great. A few questions I've got is, number one is page 85 of the report talks about roundabouts and contemplates them and says the city might consider having policies for roundabouts, but I'm just curious, where does that go from here in terms of, is administration contemplating talking more about roundabouts? Is that something that I should be, if I want to see us consider more roundabouts, that's something that I should be advocating council to take action on, or where's that at the administrative level?
Thank you, Chair Bressie. There are a number of advocates within the Transportation Department and Engineering who would also like to see the city implement more roundabouts, not least because of the reductions in traffic congestion, but also the improvements in road safety. This is something that we are now considering should costs be appropriate for various intersection upgrades. We were considering a roundabout, or we have considered a couple of roundabouts recently, but the cost model didn't comply with those. I don't think we actually have a policy in place of considering roundabouts. It's not like Alberta Transportation, I think back in 2010, that said, before we consider any upgrades at an intersection, you've got to look at a roundabout. There is a lot of support, as I say, within administration for roundabouts, but it really comes down to things like the cost-benefit analysis, and so we are considering it. There isn't at this moment in time a procedure for implementing roundabouts.
Thank you, Director Glavin. I saw you popping in. I'm not sure if you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Bressie. Just to add to Robin's answer, it is something that we are actively considering. This year, we actually did consider one at 108th Avenue and 96th Street. And unfortunately, the initial cost estimates came back, I think, somewhere in the magnitude of 5 times more than replacing the lights in that area. So some of the ones where we're looking at retrofitting existing intersections can be a little bit more challenging than greenfield development. But it is something that we are looking at because they do move traffic efficiently and have some proven safety benefits as well. So we are actively looking for opportunities to do roundabouts.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, Mayor Given.
Thanks, Chair Bressie. I know that you have gone through the plan in detail, and if you have other questions, please make sure that you ask them. I don't want to cut you off while you're on maybe getting on a roll there. But I'm curious, just changing topics a little bit, the recommendation talks about directing administration to make revisions to the offsite levy bylaw. And I just wonder, recognizing that some of the long-term improvements long-term improvements and midterm actually are actually outside of the city's current boundary, particularly the southwest connector, I think what we're sometimes calling 40X. But I wonder, does the plan at all talk to the need for for the city and county to describe a framework for collaboration on these types of infrastructure projects that cross municipal boundaries or may transition from one municipality to another over time. And secondly, is now a good time for us to be initiating some discussion about the development of a intermunicipal offsite levy to help address some of these types of infrastructure projects.
Thank you. Through the chair. The Transportation Master Plan does identify and acknowledge that a number of the suggested upgrades are outside of the city's current city boundary. And therefore, it also mentions the need to engage in dialogue with other stakeholders, including the county. As I said, the Transportation Master Plan has a direct input into other planning documents, including the municipal government, the municipal development plan. And the intermunicipal development plan. So whilst the TMP doesn't set out a plan.
Robin, I'm just gonna interrupt you. Something's come up on your shared screen, and I can't see the map anymore.
Oh, sorry. I was trying to see my. Okay. There is a need for the city to talk to the county, because a lot of this growth is occurring in the county, and certainly some of the recommendations identified by the consultants would certainly impact the county and also the province. There isn't a plan at this stage for us to do that. We're just saying that by the time the city's population reaches over 100,000, we do need to start having those discussions with the county and the Alberta Transportation as well with regards to those upgrades. So at this moment in time, there isn't a plan.
Okay, thank you.
So a question I've got while we're talking about items outside the city is, I've got the Southwest Ring Road, putting that at the 120,000 population mark. Is the data considering this only considering city population, or is it also considering industry traffic that we might see happening far outside the city boundaries?
Thank you, Chair Bressie. The Transportation Master Plan did review the historical growth on the Highway 40 and other strategic roads. In addition, it also reviewed the county's Transportation Master Plan and their forecast growth as well. So there is an allowance there for the additional traffic we're likely to see because of industry or growth outside of the city.
And then did it contemplate the MD's Transportation Master Plan at all, where a lot of the activity we're seeing is coming out of the MD, not the county? Or so did we look at their planning documents, or also are their planning documents considered in the county's planning documents? Do you know?
Again, thank you. Yes, we did. We did review the other long-term transportation studies, and an allowance was put into the model for that growth.
Great. Thank you. Then one other question I've got, and this, I'm not sure if this would be a Mr. Hutchison or a Director Glavin question, but it's about our active transportation network. And I really appreciate that this master plan has phased projects and population horizons for our road network. We haven't done the same kind of work for our active transportation network. And I'm just kind of wondering, do we have a plan somewhere that's got milestones for our active transportation network? And if so, where could I find that? Or if we don't have that, how would council go about getting that developed if council wanted to? I'm just, yeah. So how are we planning for our active transportation milestones?
Should I start responding if Director Glavin needs a moment? I know that we do have, engineering has a network of what's called missing links, where we've identified that it would be nice, or desirable, should I say, to improve the trails and pathways along certain corridors or between certain developments and the city. So that plan is in place. It is managed by engineering, and they have a budget as to and therefore probably a timeline with regards to the amount of infrastructure that is built year on year. I believe there is also a city document. I'm trying to think of its title, but there is a city. Its name escapes me unless it's in. No, I haven't made reference to it here in the in my reports, but it was certainly reviewed as part of the Transportation Master Plan. The city do have a document talking about the desire to increase active transportation in the city, and as I say, that was incorporated into this report.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other questions before we start getting to some motions dealing with this? Great. Yeah, City Manager Galante.
Yeah, not just in addition to Robin's comment, is the community mobility plan, probably what the ward is looking for. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you, Chair Bressi. Actually, I was trying to chime and be like, I think it's under the community mobility plan of 2015 that we did. Anyways, I'm just prepared to make the motion. I want to do two. So I know I sent you a message already, Councillor Bressi. I really liked what you had to say about bringing back a report for 92nd Street. So I'd like to get your wording, because I tried my best to capture it, and I don't know if I did it, and I really liked how succinctly you placed it. So I'm just going to start with the motion as presented, and I would move that committee recommend council adopt the Transportation Master Plan 2020 by resolution and direct administration to review and bring back amendments to the Transportation Offsite Levy Bylaw, the Transportation System Bylaw, and the Municipal Development Plan as required. And then I'll get to the next motion after, but I'll need your help, Dylan.
Sure. Great. Is there any question or debate on this first motion? Mayor Given.
Yeah, no, happy to support the motion. I just wanted to get on the record that after this other one that you two are discussing, I'd also like to get on for an additional one.
Sure. I'll make sure that happens. Awesome. Well, any conversation on this motion? In that case, call it to question. All in favor? That motion carries. And then I can't make a motion, but if Councillor Thiessen or somebody else would like to make one, a motion that I'd love to see committee pass would be to direct administration to bring back to a future meeting a report outlining potential upgrades, including projected timelines on 92 Street. And we had some verbal talk today about what's happening with 92 Street, but I'd love us to direct that something written be brought back to us so we can show the community, yes, we actually are thinking about 92 Street, and here's what you might expect in the future.
All right, and thank you for that, Chair Bressi. I would make that motion. I had in my notes too to seek out to improve the safety, traffic flow, and reduce congestion. But I don't think we need to get that prescriptive. I think that'll come back in the report. So as if Amanda's captured what Councillor or Chair Bressi has stated, I will make that motion.
Mayor Given?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think we need to get that prescriptive on those parts, but we may want to identify what 92nd Street actually is pretty long, goes all the way up to Crystal Lake. And so you may want to identify, I think what we're talking about is from 68th Avenue to, I'm not sure what that be, 92nd Avenue, approximately?
Yeah, Park Road.
So I would be happy to support the motion if we sort of scoped that out a little bit there to say, we specifically mean this section of 92nd Street, because I'm sure there are other improvements that can be made to other parts, but I think the primary concern is that one, or it may only be to 84th Avenue. So, I'd open for discussion there, but I think the twinning, the twinned portion really ends at just south of 92nd Avenue.
And thank you, Mayor Given. My thoughts on it were from 68th to 84th is probably where I hear the most people have concerns about that area. Everything prior to that going north has turning lanes that are specified and help ease off the congestion and the flow of traffic. So if we want to go to 92nd, I'm sure that's okay. But what I'm hearing from the community is really 84th to 68th.
Great. So are you open to that? Do you welcome the friendly amendments then, Councillor Thiessen?
Always. We're putting this together. We're a team.
Great. And then I'll ask our recording secretary, Amanda, do you have the motion as committee attends it? Do you have the friendly amendment down?
Yeah, if it's okay with you, Councillor Bressy, I'd just like to read it back to make sure it's good.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Committee directs administration to bring back a report outlining potential upgrades to 92 Street from 68 Avenue to 92 Avenue, including timelines.
Yeah.
But I think we decided 84th, right?
Yeah, I think 84th, Amanda. And that's a long scope, but I think we may find that we might recommend that no upgrades in that 84 to 92nd. But yeah, the concern from the public is definitely coming from 84 to 68.
Well, and yeah, and I like 84th too, because there's nothing in this motion. If administration got into it and said, holy smokes, we realized that we should talk about up to 92nd too. They definitely could. And so, but I like not requiring them to do that if we don't see a reason for it. So yeah, I definitely support the emotion with that friendly amendment. Any other conversation or debate on this motion? Great. In that case, let's call it to question. All in favor? And that motion carries. And Mayor Given, you had a motion too.
Yeah, and so I'm open for some discussion with my council colleagues on this. My first inclination was to I would like to have some kind of formal start to or initiation of a discussion about intermunicipal offsite levies, recognizing that the traffic in the city impacts county infrastructure, and traffic from the county impacts city infrastructure. And in many cases, offsite levies are intended to make improvements that would benefit everybody. But I'm trying to decide whether we direct administration to initiate that discussion and provide an update at a future committee meeting, or whether this is a recommend council write the County of Grande Prairie requesting the discussion on an intermunicipal offsite levy. So I'm sort of two minds. I would be happy to hear sort of an administrative perspective from the county to start off with, more informally, and then if we decided we wanted to make that more formal with a letter from the mayor to the Reeve, that kind of thing, then we could do that. But I'm not sure that we've sort of administratively broached that subject, and so that's kind of why I was leaning to starting it that direction. I'm curious what my colleagues would think, or the city manager.
Yeah, and City Manager Galante.
Okay, thank you, Chair Bressy. As in many different topics, we initially had administrative conversations with my counterpart at the county, so we can take this approach initially, have some conversations about what would be the best way to manage this. It's a significant project for sure, so I'm suspecting that it's going to take some time to build this intermunicipal offsite levy project. So I would suggest that allow me to have initial conversations with my counterpart, Julia, and then report back to council on the county perspective on this, if you are amenable to that.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm comfortable with that, but I would like to have it as a motion so we can kind of track it and we don't lose, track the fact that this is something that is worthy of discussion. So I'd make that motion to move the committee direct administration, initiate discussions with the County of Grande Prairie on the development of an intermunicipal offsite levy. Period.
Great. Any discussion or debate on this motion? In that case, all in favor? That motion carries. And then is there any other business arising out of this? I think the one thing I will say is I did do a little bit of a look through our active transportation plans over the weekend, but this being a 305-page document, I didn't get as much time to read other documents as I would have liked to, so I'll be doing more homework over the week. I personally think that I might have an appetite for us to invest more in planning our active transportation network. So I don't have a motion that I'm going to suggest today, but I might be making a motion to council to that effect when this does come on Monday. So I just wanted to mention that now. Is there any other conversation, debate about this? Great. Well, in that case, let's move on to, I believe, our last item is our outstanding items list. and that would be Director Glavin.
Thank you, Chair Bressie. A couple updates here regarding item 1104. We're going to add the date to committee as December 10th. And item 1082, we're going to bring back on October 29th.
Great. Could I get a motion to accept the outstanding items list? Councillor Clayton.
So moved. Thank you.
Awesome. Any discussion or debate? In that case, all in favor? That motion carries. And with that, this meeting is adjourned. And I'll hand this over to, I believe it's Councillor Friesen with the Community Services Committee is next.
I believe it is. Thank you, Councillor Bressie. I'm just wondering if anyone needs a break. I recognize we've been sitting for a couple of hours. Perhaps I would suggest I would appreciate 10 minutes. Reconvene around 11:10. Great, thank you. Services Committee meeting. And I'm chairing the meeting, and with me are Councillors Clayton and Platt and Mayor Given, who will be voting, although on any matters that come before us, although any councillor certainly can speak to matters. So let's start off with the verbal update from Director Miller.
All right, thanks, Chair Friesen. So before I start talking about the individual departments and providing the updates, what I wanted to do is introduce Jody Boyne. I think Jody's on the screen there. So Jody is the new Senior Executive Advisor for Community Services, and she started in the role yesterday. And I think some of Council knows Jody already. Jody's joining us from the RCMP. For the last couple of years, she's been a city employee with the RCMP in a finance admin role. And then prior to that, she was a public service employee for quite a few years. And I think a lot of council knows my background too, so I'm familiar with Jody from my RCMP days, and thrilled that she's now working with me at City Hall. And I also wanted to take the opportunity to say thank you very much to Stephanie for her time. So that she spent 2 years in the role, and she was the first senior executive advisor that the city had in such a role, and kind of broke new ground and did a lot of good things, helped out community services and helped out me a lot. And she'll remain in her role as the sports development, wellness, and culture manager. So Jody's an excellent addition to the team, and a bonus that Stephanie sticks around in a different role. So with that, I'll let Jody go, and Stephanie's going to join us for her presentation shortly. But so I'll start off with CKC and Twin Ice Arenas. So recently, our management team provided some advice to the town of Slave Lake, and just on the precautions to take with COVID. So we're thrilled that they're reaching out to us as a best practice, and I think we've, with our health and safety team and the other teams that we have, we've got a lot of good measures put in place. And then also wanted to provide an update on the Eastlink phased reopening. So we've seen an increase in traffic due to opening up the Lazy River, as well as walking track amenities. And we've also now provided access to the personal trainers, and so they can work with their clients following AHS guidelines, of course. And then events and entertainment. The public library has now resumed full operations. They've made masks mandatory for both staff and for the public. And if the public doesn't have a mask, and if they're not prepared to wear a mask, then they have a process set up in place where staff will actually bring the books out to curbside, or the items that they wish to use from the library. And then Teresa Sargent Hall, just an update there, that the door project has started now, and we did take the advice of council, and we made it as wide as possible. So we're excited to see that. That'll be put in place shortly, then that'll help us for future events. We're also doing an upgrade on the sound system. We've heard concerns in the past, so we've figured out a way to make that better. And then Revolution Place, I think council would be aware of the Rip Fest that we had working with Rotary, and it was a huge success. Over 2,500 people attended, and already they're planning for next year. So it's another good news story. The drive-through service was worked out very well. And with facilities, with the museum site, we're currently working on coordination for moving out the museum trailer, and then prepare the site for the expansion project. And then an update on the entrance sign features. So the signs have been built, they're ready for installation. The pilings are going in, I believe, as we speak. So within a couple of weeks, hopefully we should have the signs on the west end and on the north end as well. And then switching to fleet. The equipping of the three new electric buses is continuing, hoping to have those on the road by the end of the month. We did have a delay with the vendor attending to help us with the prep work. Just they were redeployed to another municipality, I guess. And but we're still hopeful by the end of August we'll have those additional buses on the road. And with sports development, wellness, and culture, the pickleball courts are nearly complete. With the resurfacing, the fencing is finished. A few small details to remain are outstanding yet, but the grand opening is August 22nd, so that's this weekend coming up. So it's exciting to see. And I just wanted to say thank you very much to both the Transportation and Parks Department for their assistance with the project. I think by using internal resources, we also saved dollars, which good use of resources. And the International Museum Day will be hosted on September 5th, and it's a partnership with Philip J. Curry Dinosaur Museum, and we have a site-wide scavenger hunt planned, Indigenous crafts, and also the community will also be invited to help decorate a new community mural for the Grande Prairie Museum. So, and then switching to transit, our ridership continues to be low at this time. We're about 45% of the expected volume, the normal volume for this time of year. And then we've recently been contacted by Alberta Health Services asking if we'll consider 2 bus routes for the new hospital site. So we're exploring how that could work. And then at the present time, we have 12 buses that are equipped with the driver shields. Still working the fleet to finish the installation in the others, as well as looking at installation for the accessible transit buses. So that's my report, Chair Friesen, unless there's any questions.
Thank you, Director Miller. Any questions for Director Miller? I'm not seeing anything. Getting a thumbs up from Councillor Thiessen. Ms. Cavalier, then we'll move on to the Arctic Winter Games Legacy Fund and your report and the recommendations therein, please.
Thank you, Chair Friesen. So the Arctic Winter Games is an international celebration of sport and culture. The 2010 Arctic Winter Games were held in Grande Prairie, and the games were a great success because of the strong community and regional partnerships that were fostered during the planning of that event. So the Legacy Fund was established to continue to expand those partnerships and create opportunities to bring youth-focused recreation, sport, and cultural events for youth to Grande Prairie and the region. So administration, this is a follow-up from the previous community group funding meeting. So administration reached out to the Arctic Winter Games Management Committee regarding our proposal to amend the criteria for the Legacy Fund, and that amendment would include operational funding for council-approved sport organizations to a maximum of $14,000 per organization per year. So of the folks that were contacted, 7 members responded, and the responses that were received were definitely favorable for the proposal. So based on the feedback that was received from members of the management committee, the revised criteria that we would recommend would give preference to sport organizations that would provide recreation, sporting, and/or cultural events for youth, sport and recreation opportunities that enhance the community, sports that are involved in the Arctic Winter Games, and sports or organizations that provide a free or low-cost service to the community. So the Legacy Fund itself has been utilized 3 times in the last 5 years and 8 times since its inception in 2010. The fund started with $384,000, and with the interest that's been earned each year, the current balance of that Legacy Fund is approximately $364,000. So the average annual interest from the endowment fund is approximately $7,200. It does fluctuate a little bit, but that's the average. So based on past utilization, administration would recommend lowering the annual allocation for bid funding to $5,000. If no bid applications were submitted, then the interest would simply be utilized toward the operational grant funding with little impact to the principal of the fund, thus ensuring sustainability of the Legacy Fund for years to come. And similar to community group funding, administration would propose that operating grant recipients would be prepared to enter into a funding agreement with the city if their application is approved. So administration recommends amending the criteria for Arctic Winter Games Legacy Fund to include operational funding for council-approved sport organizations to a maximum of $14,000 per organization per year, allocating $10,000 to Peace Wapiti Speed Skating Club for the 2021 funding cycle, and reducing the annual Arctic Winter Games Legacy Fund allocation for bid funding to $5,000. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Cajole? I'm not seeing any. Oh, yeah, Councillor Thiessen, you have. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Chair Friesen. Thank you, Ms. Cajolet, for the work that you put into this and for getting to the bottom of it so we can hopefully free up some important dollars for community groups that's required in the sports field. I guess my question was, during our community group funding cycle, we had a presentation from the Wolverine Wheelchair Sports Association. Would they qualify under these new terms?
These would be in addition to the existing criteria for Arctic Winter Games, so there would be some amendment. At the time that their application was received, they were not recommended for funding, just on the information provided, so that would certainly could be a council direction if that wasn't the way that they wanted to go, that we did fund that request, and we could certainly do that.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any hands flying up. Mayor Given, I just have a quick question or a clarification. Ms. Cajolet, in the stakeholder engagement, there's reference to revising criteria, giving preference to particular sport organizations. But is that just done at that level? Is there anything that this committee or council need to respond to in terms of that revision? Or is it only as it applies to the operational funding of $14,000?
Thank you, Chair Friesen. So we would amend this criteria because the previous recommendation was accepted to administer this fund if it was approved through Pursuit of Excellence, then the terms of reference for the Pursuit of Excellence Committee would also need to be changed, and that would allow everything to flow through. So if these recommendations are approved, the next step would be to amend the POE terms of reference, and committee and council would have the opportunity to approve those.
Thank you. So that's a follow-up based on what happens today. All right, I did see, Mayor Given, that you were prepared, I assume, to make a motion? Thank you.
Yes,
go ahead.
I'd just make the motions contained in the report and their recommendations from committee to council, amending the criteria for the Legacy Fund, allocating that $10,000 to Peace Wapiti Skating Club for the 2021 cycle, and reducing the annual allocation for bid funding to $5,000.
Thank you, Mayor Given. Is there any discussion regarding the motion? Thanks. Then call to question. All in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Cajolet. Other business is, I'd like to call Councillor Bressi. You wanted to bring forward the idea of on-demand transit, so you have the floor.
Yeah, that's right. And basically, I don't think that I need to take too much committee's time, but what I wanted to ask is if there's any appetite to have further conversations about on-demand transit. And this is a model that's been adopted very successfully in some smaller municipalities than us in Alberta, and in some municipalities of similar size to us outside of Alberta. And I think there might be potential for on-demand transit, not to replace our system probably, but to help us service the neighborhoods or the times where there is low ridership. But still, there might not be a lot of riders that need to get around, but for those individual riders, transit is really important. And I think an on-demand model might provide opportunities to service them both better and using less taxpayer resources. And the reason I'm bringing this up now is because I know that we had some in-demand usage in response to COVID-19. And what I'm curious the committee would be interested in asking administration for is two things. One, a report back just with how did that go doing on demand throughout COVID-19, and did we learn any lessons? And also, does administration see any opportunities for on-demand usage in our system going forward? So I'm asking committee, hey, would you guys be willing to get this conversation going? Not asking for more specific action than that right now.
Thank you, Councillor Bressi. So I know we've been kind of sniffing around this idea for a little bit, and although I can't make a motion, I would be keen to support a motion such as you have suggested. So I'm looking to my fellow committee members here. Councillor Platt?
Thanks, Chair Friesen. I guess just on that, I'll ask if administration if this is a report that could come back and if this is something that's already being worked on, just so I can understand the scope of work it's going to create for administration to do this. To know whether I'm going to support it or not. Probably will, but I just want to know whether the administration is looking at if they've already got work on going with this.
Thank you. Director Miller?
Sorry, Councillor Friesen, can you hear me or?
Yes, yeah, we can.
Oh, okay, thanks. So if I could just say a couple things. Thanks very much for the heads up that this was going to be brought forward today. So I just wanted to say we have been working on some demand options for the future, and Mr. Harvard's also on the screen here, and he was given a heads up to hopefully speak to this today. And perhaps with the information we can share, it might satisfy council that we are working on it, and we do plan to continue working on it and see what we can have for an option for on-demand for the future to make our transit system more efficient and more cost-effective as well. So,
Thank you.
If you could allow Mr. Harvard, that'd be great.
I would appreciate hearing what you have to say. Mr. Harvard, go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so just so that give everybody an update, we have been, during the COVID times, implementing what I call a hybrid on-demand service, utilizing one of the large buses at the end of the night to accommodate anybody who calls in prior to noon that day for rides for that last hour, or on Saturdays, the last 2 hours of service that we used to provide. On average right now, we're getting 2 riders on a Saturday and 1 during the weekday. So not a lot of demand, but it's out there, and we're happy that we can serve those people. Most of those are actually employment driven trips, so that's really good. On the second part, we've been working very feverishly on an on-demand system right now in the background. We are at the point right now where we've made the decision as to how we're going to implement this. I'm working with procurement currently, because what we're wanting to do is leverage the system that we currently have with our accessible transit, because they have the database and they are, for all intents and purposes, an already on-demand service. We want to leverage that system and use a different module that they have, which will allow people to book their own trips, cancel their own trips, and also in real time watch their bus coming towards them. So that will be available for all accessible clients, but also my plan is to migrate that into a conventional system as well, so that we'll be able to utilize a demand response for, again, certain days, certain times, certain areas of the city. My bigger plan for transit has always been a 3-tier type of service, where we have the larger buses serving the times, the days, the areas that have that constant demand, moving towards a smaller community style bus, or again, the times and days and routes that don't have enough demand to actually warrant a large 40-foot bus. And then the last layer is that on-demand service for, again, those areas and times where the demand is really just spotty, but we do want to provide service there. So that's, in a nutshell, that's sort of where we're moving towards, and I'm certainly open to all questions.
That's great. What is the timeline that we may expect to see a formal proposal back to us?
Well, Madam Chair, right now, as I mentioned, we're working to have a direct award through procurement. I'm hoping to get, I'm hoping to get that polished off by the end of the month, and then working with TripSpark to see when they can install the system and get it operating. I suspect, knowing software and the time delay, we're probably looking at I would say, beginning of October to get that on-demand service working.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Harvard? Not. Oh, Councillor Palat, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair Friesen. I just, sorry, my battery's dying, so I'm turning down my light here a little bit to see if I can get her through this meeting. But I just would make a motion to ask administration to come back to the appropriate standing committee, which would probably be this one, a report on transit on demand. It does sound like they've got quite a bit of work on this already, and I appreciate Councillor Bressy bringing this up. So I will put that motion out for discussion.
Thank you, Councillor Platt. And just to clarify, are you speaking written or just a more fulsome verbal?
I think for me on this one, I'd actually like this to be written. I think that if they've done some work on it, I think that as much as I appreciate the verbal, I think we get lost sometimes in translation on a few things. And I think having a verbal piece in front of us, especially on something as important as transit, would be good for our community to be reviewing.
Thank you. Any discussion regarding the motion? Right, all in favor then? I'm not seeing any. I'll call the question. All in favor? And that is unanimous. Passed. Any other discussion or motions arising from this topic? Councillor Bressy, are you reasonably satisfied with this progress?
Yeah, I'm very satisfied. I'm really excited to hear more about administration work. I know that it was happening in the background, but it's great to hear more, and I'm excited that this is something that council's interested in learning more. So thank you for passing this motion to the committee, and thank you to administration for the work on this. I think it is an exciting topic of conversation.
Thank you. All right, that then brings us to the outstanding items list. Director Miller.
All right, thanks, Chair Friesen. So we have 4 items on the list. Just in regards to 1099, the community group funding requests, we wanted to move that one forward, I believe, to September 1st, so you'll see that in a couple weeks. And then that's just a change on the oil. The next 2 items will remain for September 29th. And then, of course, we heard from Ms. Casualay today on the Arctic Winter Games, so that one can be removed. And I think that's, unless there's any questions on oil.
Any questions for Director Miller? And if not, just a motion to accept as amended. Mayor Gibbons?
I'd move that motion.
Thank you. And all in favor? That passes unanimously, and thank you very much. That brings to a close the Community Services meeting, and I believe I'm passing on to Infrastructure and, Protective and Social Services.
Thanks, Chair Friesen. So we'll start the Protective and Social Services Committee. And if I can just ask Director Manuel for his verbal update, please.
Morning. So we have Community Social Development. We have the Ministry of Community Social Services is reviewing many of its programs, which includes FCSS. The purpose of this review is to strengthen and clarify strategic intent, and the province indicated a targeted engagement will occur in September. Youth Advisory Council recruitment is underway, and the Opioid Task Force Subcommittee will be planning additional awareness videos using unspent dollars from Alberta Health and Rotary Club of Grande Prairie funding. And addition, in support of housing, they report that a planning engagement process for future supportive housing builds is underway right now. Enforcement Services is in the process of doing a number of training opportunities and recertifications. And additionally, they will be preparing for their back to school traffic safety campaign. So reminding motorists that school zones are going to start up here right away. And they'll be out in full force, reminding folks that come September, those school zones go back into effect. We have GPREP monitoring wildfire situations in British Columbia at the moment, and continuing planning around COVID and some of the future events that may be related to that. The fire department is continuing with their CAD upgrade project as they navigate implementing that project in light of COVID-19 restrictions with some of our consultants. Additionally, Fire Administration is working with Northern Rockies Regional Municipality, which is the Fort Nelson area, with the idea of them becoming a contract client for the city of Grande Prairie. So this will be the first time that in Alberta Dispatch Center is dispatching for a British Columbia municipality. So it's an interesting development there. And we are presently working with the MD of Greenview to transition them to the new digital radio network, AFRAX. They are also a client of Grande Prairie 911. The RCMP are doing their annual firearms, taser, and scenario-based training at the moment. And they are report that they're continuing to adhere to COVID-19 guidelines and protocols to reduce potential staffing and operational impacts. So that's more or less an update from the various departments in PSS.
Great. Thanks for that, Director Manuel. Some questions, Mayor Gibbon?
Yeah, Dr. Manuel, can you just, at the very start there, it sounded like you referenced a review of the provincial FCSS program. Is there somewhere where council can see more information about what the province has been saying about that? Has administration received a letter about it, or is their website sort of talking about it, or that's the first I've heard?
Yeah, I'll have to follow up with Angela Sutherland from Community Social Development, but once I do, I'll circulate council some further information.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for that. Any other questions for Director Manuel? Okay. I guess seeing none, we'll call your number again there for item 1.2, the traffic enforcement efficiency. So Director Manuel again.
Okay, well, I have to credit some peer review on this one, in that I had a written report that was on the agenda to come forward to this meeting that was going to discuss some pitfalls with our provincial traffic enforcement, I guess, customer service approach and its process through the courts. And during that peer review, I was made aware of Bill 21, which is a piece of provincial legislation called the Provincial Administrative Penalties Act. It was introduced by the government in June and received royal assent on July 23rd of this year. And what that's going to do is it significantly modernizes and changes the way in which primarily provincial offenses, but also municipal bylaws are treated in the province. Some highlights of that is it essentially eliminates the court process and brings about an online tribunal with more or less a hearing officer, I guess, would be, some of the details are still to be rolled out, but the intent is to remove over 2 million non-criminal cases from the court system each year, and will no longer require the police to testify in court. There'll be some alternative methods, such as officers submitting their notes as part of the submission of the violation ticket. So essentially what's going to happen is the general public will be introduced to a new online system to dispute tickets, thereby freeing up both court and police resources. And the new system is expected to roll out in 2021. The phasing that the province has identified under the Justice Transformation Initiative is phase 1 is the creation of an adjudication branch with a mandate to resolve impaired driving related contraventions of the Traffic Safety Act to be operational this fall, as well as strengthening the administrative penalties for impaired driving. So in conjunction with the traffic fine piece, they're also reworking how impaired driving is being processed at the province. And again, they're removing that out of the courts except for serious criminal offenses, essentially, that cause injuries or significant property damage or fatalities. Regular impaired driving, it looks like, will be dealt through this adjudication system. By the end of 2021, the expanded jurisdiction of the adjudication branch will address all contraventions of the Traffic Safety Act and municipal bylaws, except those that result in bodily harm or death. And phase 3 will see an expansion to essentially all areas of provincial jurisdiction where diversion is deemed appropriate. So it's a complete overhaul of the justice system, and frankly there's a lot of details that still need to be flushed out regarding how this is going to be operationalized. I do have a 2-pager that I'll circulate to council for some more reference, but essentially anything that administration previously would have been proposing under traffic efficiency would have been done under the context of the Provincial Offences Procedures Act, which is being replaced by this. So we're kind of taking a step back, and I think we have to see what's going to transpire with the new legislation.
Okay. Thanks for a little bit of a curveball, I guess. I seen Councillor O'Toole's hand up. And then Councillor Thiessen.
Yeah, thanks very much, Director Manuel. I appreciate your report. I do have, I'm looking forward to seeing that 2-pager that you mentioned, but I guess, did the province give you any sort of certified or verified timelines when the whole program is going to be available for both the public and the municipalities to look at? I know you said it's in 3 phases.
Yeah, the law itself is, like I said, it's received royal assent. It's still, the in force date hasn't been determined to my knowledge as of yet. The phasing, it just specifies fall 2020 for the first phase, and by the end of 2021 for the second. Pretty vague at the moment.
Well, I just want to comment. I think this is a huge change for the public to deal with, and I'm sure we're going to hear a lot of feedback on it, whether it's positive or negative. But thank you for the report, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the details are. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor O'Toole. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Chair Palata. Thank you very much as well, Director Manuel, for your verbal update on this. I too look forward to seeing the circulation. And oh, sorry. Oh, okay. All right, I'll just keep going. I really look forward to the circulation of this, but I'm also really curious how this online adjudication is going to work in regards to impaired driving. So I'd like to see that, and I'd actually like to put in some input into that because, my mind is like going off in a whole bunch of different directions without seeing it in the fine print, how they plan to operate this or operationalize this in the Traffic Efficiency Act or Traffic Safety. I'm really curious. I do have some concerns, but I guess I'll wait to see till it circulates. So I look forward to that coming around. No questions, just a commentary, but it's because my mind went, what? Anyway, thanks, guys.
Thanks for that. Councillor Thiessen, any other questions for Director Manuel on this one? Okay. Just a question, I guess. Are we looking to receive this for any information, or just more for a verbal update?
I would suggest we receive it for information. A couple of the highlight pieces here that I'll just note I got in front of me is it's believed that this is going to eliminate 8% of the court time that's allocated to deal with just the impaired driving piece. and eliminate approximately 1,200 complex full multi-day trials, freeing up more than 30,000 hours of police officer time to be reallocated back to the streets. So there is some big numbers there.
Great, that's good to know. Councillor O'Toole? You just got to unmute yourself, Councillor O'Toole.
Now you want to hear me, eh? All right. So just if there's no other questions, I would make a motion that we take item 1.2, the traffic enforcement efficiency Bill 21 update for information.
Thanks for that, Councillor O'Toole. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call those all in favor. And that's carried. And we'll go back to Director Manuel one more time for the outstanding items list, please.
Okay, just taking a look. So I believe all matters on the list remain on target. I guess just a quick discussion point on 1055, which is traffic enforcement efficiency. I think a lot of what we were trying to achieve, or what I was trying to achieve, is now heavily impacted by this Bill 21. Just looking to the committee for some thoughts on how we proceed, or whether we should, or what we do from here.
So, not seeing any hands up. A potential suggestion maybe is do we just update a list and ask this to come back when you have more information, maybe a little bit further down the road, or is there another will of committee here? Correct, Manuel, what do you think the best moving forward with this?
I think I heard Mayor Given there a second ago.
Oh, I think it was Councillor O'Toole.
Okay. No, fair enough. Well, I think what we could do is pull 1055 off the list, and as more information becomes available on this, we can reconstitute a new position on whether we believe that new legislation and new approach, once the details are fleshed out, are going to achieve what we were hoping to achieve through our own system. I can tell you that preliminarily, it looks like it's going to be a much better customer service approach, which was our primary goal. And it's yet to be determined what the financial implications of this are going to be. It's pretty vague. So I think I need more information to come with a better position.
Okay. Councillor O'Toole?
Yeah. Thank you very much. I agree with you, Director Manuel. I think if we pull this off, and then when we get more information, the dates and stuff like that fall into place, then we can assess what we had planned and where we're going in the near future. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor O'Toole. Then I had Councillor Bressi and then Councillor Thiessen.
Great. Just I want to make sure I understand what's going on, Director Manuel, in terms of, so the province is streamlining its system in a way that will presumably save a lot of costs for the province, correct?
I wouldn't necessarily. So what they're saying on the provincial side is that they're going to create in a level of, there's going to be some costs created, but there's going to be a level of capacity created that's going to allow them to address the backlogs that they have on the more serious criminal matters. Now, where the municipality will benefit from this is we, through our police service and peace officers, spend an exorbitant amount of time with staff sitting in courtrooms, waiting for matters to go ahead. And this is going to eliminate the need to do that. So there will definitely be some, employee hours returned to the city to perform the duties we actually employ them to do.
Right, which is great. I just think it's worth highlighting that it's interesting. It's great the province is doing a lot more streamlined process that will save a lot of its administrative costs on traffic too. It's also interesting it's doing at the same time, it's doubled how much money it takes from the city on-traffic fines ostensibly for administration of the system. So I just think that's worth, as we think about how to respond to this, highlighting the province is reducing its costs while doubling its revenue.
Councillor Thiessen?
Thank you, Chair Palat, and thank you for that, Councillor Bressie. You made some really good points there, and something for us all to consider. In regards to taking this off of the outstanding items list, I mean, I could get outvoted on this, but I'm more inclined to leave it on the outstanding items list. And my reasoning for that is, even if we just add the tagline, awaiting more information from the province and TBD, like, I don't mind having that like constantly in our consciousness as we go through every committee meeting day and stuff like that. It gives us an opportunity to touch base with Director Manuel and say, hey, have you heard anything new? He may not have anything to report immediately, but you know, he does hear whisperings through his channels, and can give us a bit of an update, which will allow us to gain a bit of perspective. So part of my concern is, and I have total faith that this will come back, even if we take it off the outstanding items list when those decisions are made. But I think it's important and imperative that we have our minds focused on it, and we don't lose it, because it might surprise us if it comes back in 3 months and then we're like, oh yeah, we didn't even put any thought into that. But this is fairly important, fairly significant for how we do our traffic enforcement and traffic efficiency. So I'd like to keep it on the list. So if there's a motion to remove it from the list for now, even temporarily, I don't know if I can support it, but I just prefer to have it on the list. And I look forward to any other comments on this as well.
Thanks for that, Councillor Thiessen. Just a question for Director Manuel. I think you referenced about 30,000 RCMP hours would be saved. I'm assuming that's for the province. Do we have any kind of an idea of locally what we'd be thinking we'd save? Like, would it be 1,000 hours and half the FTE would show up, or?
So what I can say is that 30,000 hours was just allocated to the impaired driving trials, which are a fraction of the traffic enforcement trials. So I can tell you that from my time in enforcement services, that we're seriously looking at hundreds of hours of officer time spent in the courtrooms that will be freed up. So this is a good move.
Okay, thank you for that. So I guess we'd entertain a motion here, one way or another, to decide if we're going to leave it on or take it off, and we can have a debate about that. Councillor O'Toole?
I would make the motion to leave the item 1055 on and add the tagline Bill 21 review. And that compromises the council members that were voting, and we get it looked after.
I appreciate that, Councillor O'Toole. And I guess just for administration, the time to be determined, you guys would put a date in there like normal, and we'll see that on our next committee update. Am I correct on that? Okay. Great. I appreciate the motion there on that, Councillor O'Toole. Thanks for kind of working with the committee here. So I'll call the question. All in favor? And I'm not seeing Mayor Gibbon. Is he off the call now? Am I missing a vote, or?
I haven't seen Mayor Gibbon on the screen in a little while.
Okay, so I guess with that, that's unanimous. I won't call if there's any opposed, and that'll close off the Protective and Social Services Committee. Thank you. And we'll move it over to Mr. Minhas to chair the Corporate Services. Thanks, Councillor Minhas.
Thank you very much, Wade. And we're starting our committee cooperative agenda. And start with that, we are me and Councillor Friesen and Toole and Mayor Gibbon. And Bill is not around. So first item is 101 Director Service Update. Arena is Shane Brook. Oh, there you go, man.
Thank you, Chairman Haas. I'll start with assessment and taxation, and just a reminder that the revised tax deadline is August 31st this year. And just also a reminder for those listening that for those that don't believe they can pay by that deadline, to contact the city, as there is a program to make arrangements for a monthly plan that runs through the end of the year. But the important part of that is that taxpayers have to make a proactive call to the city and have that discussion to make those arrangements. And that needs to be done before the deadline of August 31st. Just an update on where we are in collecting payments for tax revenue. We're just about over 50% of where we would be, or where of the total amount. We expect the next couple of weeks to that number to climb steadily as the deadline approaches. And a note tied to that from finance is that while we're appreciative of having the line of credit in place as a cash flow management, we don't anticipate having to utilize that this year, and that the revenue in our cash flow management strategy has been successful, and we will not use that line of protection. Just a note, the province has provided a notification that we will receive 8.2 million in available stimulus funding to be spent before the end of 2021. Administration's reviewing a number of projects right now to make sure we maximize the grants that we have to apply for before October. We will be coming back to council with that, some recommendations on how we should proceed well before the deadline to make sure we maximize that money. Procurement has tried something new. We've just issued 2 rapid bids where we added some road rehab work for this year. Working with some of the industry that we thought would bid, we had a 3-week bid process. So from issue to award was 3 weeks. In discussions with industry, although we could probably shave a few more days off of that, 3 weeks really becomes the minimum that makes sense for them to submit bids and then also to ask questions. But we had some positive feedback, and we're able to get a couple more projects in this year through utilizing this new process. We won't use it for all projects, but where it makes sense, we will look at doing that. From ITS and GIS, we've just completed a previously approved capital project to install a redundant server location. We did not have one until this month, which put us at risk for data loss if there was a catastrophic event, particularly here at City Hall. So that project has given us an insurance policy. We will utilize it for some ongoing day-to-day things, but it really is a full redundancy to our system. City operates on a ton of data, and having that backed up, I know reassures me that we could recover quickly if needed be. From communications and marketing, later today, some more information on the Revolution Place engagement will be going out for the community to give some feedback starting September 8th. This next couple of weeks, we're really just providing some more information on what the proposal would look like. And then September 8th, taking some community feedback. We'll also be doing a statistically significant poll during that period where random residents will be called and asked to provide some feedback. So there's a few different opportunities, and that'll all be outlined to the media this afternoon. And development of the voluntary mask campaign that Council directed us to consider is proceeding, and we're just still gathering some information. We will have a more formal update by next council meeting next week. So we'll give some more information on what our recommendation is to move quickly on that. And that is all for my update today.
Thank you very much, Shane. Is there any question for Shane's update? Don't see none.
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, so then we move into 1.2 unaudited finance statement and supporting information for the quarter ending June 30th, 2020. Daniel, are you wrong? Oh, there you go.
There we are.
Okay, good morning or afternoon. So we're recommending that committee receive the unaudited financial statements and supporting information for the quarter ending June 30th for information. I'll kind of just briefly touch on a few items within the report, assuming that most of you have seen all of the information included. From the statement of financial position, I'd like to highlight that the current cash balance compared to this time last year is much lower. That is just due to the shift in the tax deadline from June 30th to August 31st. And the alternative set, so it has moved into our taxes and grants in lieu of taxes receivable. So more of our balance is sitting in receivable as opposed to cash at June 30th. However, the net financial asset position has significantly increased when compared to this time last year. On the statement of operations, revenue collected, again, as of June 30th, is almost the same as it was in 2019. Even though the first quarter of 22 was ahead, the result of revenue losses incurred due to COVID with the shutdown of facilities and cancellations of programming in March and continuing into the towards the end of the quarter has impacted revenue received to date. To reduce the impacts, we did have growth in the city's tax base as well as some additional investment income. Lower spending to date is also a result of COVID-19, facility closures, decreased operations, impacted salaries, resulting in savings due to layoffs, delayed hiring, vacancies, and redeployment. When we look at the forecasted operating variances for the second quarter, the city is anticipating to see a surplus by December 31st of $525,000. This only equates to 0.28% of the total city operating budget. As we've mentioned numerous times, COVID-19 has had a significant impact on the city. Many departments are anticipating cost savings. But also there's other departments encountering the opposite effect with their lost revenues, lost staff time, and increased costs in order to meet social distancing requirements to continue to provide essential services. As Director Burke had mentioned, there's been indication from the province that we'll receive some funding. So there was some operating funding announced to help with the costs of COVID-19. However, we have insufficient information available at this point, so no funding was included in the forecast that you see. Finally, I will note that on the staff complement, we have newly added for presentation this quarter employee hours for the first 2 quarters of 2020 and compared those to the first 2 quarters of 2019. And that's it for me.
Hey, Darlene, is there any question for it? Update? If there's none, go ahead, Kevin.
No questions, just a comment. It's pretty straightforward, easy to read, and thank you very much for that report.
I don't see anybody else, so you're going to put the motion, Kevin, then?
Yes, if there's no other questions, comments, I'll move that, we'll get it word for word here so we get it right, that the committee receive the unaudited financial statements and supporting information for the quarter ending June 30th, 2020 for information.
Thank you. Any concern about the motion? Motion on the table, any question? If there's none, all in favor? Motion carries. I think Bill is not around, so motion carries as unanimous. Okay, the next one is our reserve policy change. Daniel, you're again on the line.
Thank you, Chairman Haas. So there is 2 recommendations here within this report. The committee recommend council approve updated policy 346 as presented, and that committee recommend council allocate $3.2 million of the unallocated portion of the future expenditures reserve to be restricted for the eventual retroactive payment of RCMP salary increases from 2016 to 2020. So on July 7th, 2020, committee was presented with a reserve strategy. It was accepted for information purposes at that time, and the recommendations being made today for the policy change do support the reserve strategy presented at that time. Additionally, for analysis purposes and at the request of committee, Appendix 2 was provided just to show our per capita reserves compared to other municipalities of comparable size, as well as our neighboring municipalities. So in summary, just to ensure consistency in the operating budget and available funding for future fleet and facility needs, the Reserve Fund Policy 346 should be changed as recommended. Additionally, to ensure we have adequate funds set aside to cover those costs related to the RCMP retro pay for unionization, it would be prudent to do so within the future expenditures reserve so that future operating years will not see a deficit. Thank you.
Thank you very much for updating this policy. Is there any concern or comments? Go ahead, Ellen.
Great, thank you. I've got a question about the RCMP retro pay. I really get that it's prudent to be planning how we're going to pay for that eventually. At the same time, I also want council and our public to be very aware of when that check goes out. And so what would be the process if council authorized this now? What would be the process of that actually going out? Would it just be the check would get sent when it was demanded because we set the money aside and council doesn't need action? Or tell me about that.
Through the chair. So likely we expect to see it on one of our normal quarterly invoices from the RCMP. So those do get paid because they're built into budget, they're an approved expenditure. So we would just pay the invoice as such. I suppose the step we could take is an update to committee via maybe the director's verbal update when that does get paid. We don't have a for sure date of when, which is why we're just putting it in the future expenditures reserve at this time.
So just a thought for committee. I wonder if it might be worth directing administration not to release that pay without a motion from council. And I wouldn't expect council to actually oppose it, but I really do think it is worth making sure that that's a full public process when we're giving $3.1 million of money to the federal government to settle a court case that's years old that we had no input in. I don't know if I really like planning to make that payment. I don't know if I love the idea of us not making a decision to actually send that payment out. Even if we have little choice, I still feel it should maybe be an action of council.
Anybody? Wade. Go ahead, Wade.
Thanks, Chairman Haas. Appreciate that comment, Councillor Bressi. I tend to agree with you on that. I think when we haven't had the ability to have a conversation about something, we just got to write a check. It's always a little disheartening for your community. My question is more for Danielle, just regarding the financial stabilization reserve. If I'm looking at this correctly, I mean, and basically a 10-year period, we're asking this fund to go up by $20 million. And I know there's an appetite for some council members to have a lot of reserves, and I realize our peers maybe have a lot of reserves. I'm trying to understand why we need to have $36 million in that reserve, and I guess I'm a little curious about that, and wondering if it's tied to anything. Like if the city doesn't grow and our budget doesn't grow, does that reserve really need to go to $36 million? Like if we stagnate? And so if you could maybe just walk me through how that looks if the city doesn't grow, or if it's actually tagged to our budget or something other than just we want to smack a bunch of money in the bank account here.
Through the chair. Thank you. So it is best practice to maintain a certain level within the financial stabilization reserve. So that strategy that was presented earlier in July, it is assuming that within 10 years we get to that minimum balance requirement. So what the best practice is minimum of 5% of your annual operating budget, as well as a maximum of the 2 months of your annual operating. So it would get us up to that level, which is what is best practice for a municipality. And there was an inflation factor in that strategy. But with anything, Reserve transfers are discussed and included at each year's budget deliberations. So that is something that can be discussed further. This was just to meet the policy and best practices that are recommended for us.
Okay, no, and that makes complete sense, and we have discussed it. I guess as I looked at it more, I just think for me, I know council will debate on this year over year, and it's a policy we want to have in place. But if I'm understanding, we have about $120 million budget, so we need about $6 million in reserves to actually not be offside on that. And we're asking for, which we currently have 14, and we're asking that to go up quite substantially. So I would just, who knows where we're all going to be in time. I would just urge council to really be careful with how much money we think we need to have laying around in bank accounts. We are going through a pandemic and we haven't touched our reserves. So I think the reserves are great and I think they're important. Although having said that, a lot of not-for-profits, a lot of organizations tend to build these reserves and they just sit there. And for me, I don't think that's serving the community to the best of their ability if we're just building reserves when there's a lot of things we could be doing for that money with the community. And tax abatement's one of them. I mean, we're charging people money to put money in reserves. And so I need to have a very good reason why money's in reserves, not to just say, hey, the county and the MD have a bunch of money in reserves. I would argue if I was an MD resident or a county MD as a resident, I'd be really frustrated with the amount of reserves that they have. I don't think that's good business in my opinion, but appreciate the report. I love that we're heading with a direction and that's what we'd ask the administration to do. So I'm not dogging on Daniel. I really appreciate what we did here. I just want to voice my concerns about us having so much money in reserves that I don't know what it's going to be for, and I'd rather have it earmarked for something rather than just sitting around. So just my thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you, Wade. Any other question on this? If there's none, can you move it, Eunice or Kevin, the report? Eunice?
Thanks. So I will move that committee recommend council approve updated policy 346 as presented. Do you want both motions at the same time, Councillor Minhas, or?
No, that.
Think independently. That's my sense.
I think you can do independently.
All right. So that council approve the updated policy 346 as presented.
Motion on the table. Any question on the motion? If not, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. So next item is we've got citizen experience in innovation strategies CX implement plan. That comes to Doug McRae, Elson, Down, or Steve Dewar. Oh, what happened?
We're missing one motion.
Oh, we did? Okay, go ahead.
We're missing the second motion.
Oh,
Eunice?
sorry. Eunice, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'll give this a whirl. Oh, now I've lost it. Sorry. There we go. Also, pardon me, my washing machine is off balance right now, so if there's a lot of background noise, I'm sorry. I hope you can hear me. Okay. I did appreciate Councillor Bressy's comments about this being a matter of record at a council meeting, so I'm going to take a stab at this motion here. I would like to move that committee recommend council allocate $3.2 million of unallocated funds in the future expenditures reserve to be restricted for the eventual retroactive payment of our CMP salary increases from 2016 to 2020, and that payment of such be approved at a future council meeting.
So motion is on the table. Somebody can read that motion like how it is intended? Horacio?
Yep, thank you, Chairman. Perhaps the release of the payment to be approved by council.
Thank you. Thank you,
Horacio. So motion on table, any concern or comments? If it's none, all in favor? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Sorry, board, now we next move into 1.4, the citizen experience in innovation and strategies in implement plan. Doug? Oh, there you go.
So I will start this one off. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Corporate efficiency has worked collaboratively, department with the Citizen Contact Center to establish and commence the implementation of the citizen experience strategy that we'll share with you today. So today, while we're seeking support for a recommendation to implement 311, we'll also be providing a brief overview of the overarching strategy that's inclusive of that component. So based on Councillor Blackburn's previous experience with customer service, we have connected with him prior to this meeting, and also got his feedback in relation to this strategy. So today, Alison Downing and Case DeVries, who are our corporate efficiency advisors, will speak to this strategy and provide you with the information. Doug McGuire, who is the supervisor for the Citizen Contact Center, is also on the line. However, due to some technical challenges, he will be available to answer potentially some questions you may have, but will not participate in the formal presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Alison Downing, and as Cynthia mentioned, I will start off the presentation. So if you want to move to the next slide. Can you hear me? Oh, there we go. Okay. So CXI stands for Citizen Experience and Innovation. The CXI strategy is focused on unifying the city's customer service initiatives so that the citizens can expect to receive the same level of experience no matter which department they're dealing with the city. And for us, we can use those experiences and their feedback to drive innovation in service. So the CXI approach is taking into consideration technology and innovation, training, culture, and service level expectations. However, today our primary focus is around the technology piece, and you will see more about that other aspects in the next slide. So the current state of the city is the contact center has 33,000 calls a year, and that was last year. We've seen a substantial jump in that number due to the contact center being able to be more involved in new opportunities with other departments and with a different response to customer service based on COVID. So the Citizen Contact Center responds to requests for service on 13 of the phone numbers that are listed on the city web page, and the remaining 17 are direct transfers or direct dials, which total an additional 15,000 calls a year on average. So about the physical locations for customer service, there's nowhere at the city where you can get all city services. There are 4 locations where you can get a variety of services. That would be City Hall, City Service Center, City on 99th, and CKC. And then there are 8 locations at the city that have standalone primary services, such as Ernie Radbourne Pavilion, the museum, and Furnish 2004 example. Go on to the next slide. So the motivation for this new strategy is driven by several external and internal factors. As you're aware, the median age of the city is 32, and we are looking to embrace the communication technologies of our citizens. There are inconsistencies of level of service being provided across the organization, and this approach will also address some issues that we have with accessibility, and we can use technology to bridge those gaps. Internally, the city has set a high priority for citizen engagement and customer service, and we need a system that can meet those demands. And we also want to be able to be expandable so that new services and events and projects can fit easily into our customer service strategy. So the city requires a means to consistently capture the ideas from the internal and external stakeholders. So often we get a lot of calls and ideas from customers. We want to translate that into internal initiatives within the city. So finally, what we want to ensure is that citizens don't have to understand the city's form of government to access city information and services. So some of the key components of this strategy are the technology implementation. So what we're going to be going out to do is find a technology solution to to implement a more effective management of the customer service requests and enhance access. And we also want to centralize access. So currently, the Citizen Contact Center responds to 13 of the 30 lines, which I mentioned previously, and we'll be looking to have that central access so that all calls coming into the city go through the same channel. Calls, email, social media posts, etc. And then we also want to centralize that physical access as well. So looking to have the e-service center and service center be more hubs to cover more of the city's services. So now I'm going to pass the presentation over to Kate to continue on.
Thank you, Allison. So just breaking down those four approaches a little bit more, as Allison noted in the previous slide, looking at it from the sort of the customer's benefit as well as the city's benefit and how it relates to our customer service. The omni-channel solution that Allison mentioned is really looking at ways to connect with the customer that suits how comfortable they are with the technology that they use. And so this could potentially be looking at the introduction of potential chat AI, but also allowing people to text. Now, from the city's perspective, these channels or avenues are essentially streamlined into a single system. And so what that allows is for our customer service representatives to manage any customer inquiries to the city on a single screen rather than having to have multiple software open at the same time. The 311 solution and that approach, which is of course why we're here today in more detail, is really providing a familiar phone number for residents and visitors in connecting with their municipalities. So 311 is something that's used in Red Deer, Lethbridge, Edmonton, Calgary, as well as a number of different cities across North America. And then from the city's perspective, this allows us to have a more consistent provision of service by managing items as they come through a singular phone number. The case management software Allison mentioned, really from the customer's benefit, is allowing and opening up the option for residents to self-serve and then also tracking their service requests. On the city side, we've conducted some internal conversations and engagement with various departments who provide services and who respond to service requests. A common theme that we found was that there's no clean system for managing these requests. And then of course, in light of that, we end up closing the loop on a number of requests that come from citizens. And then the final approach, it says report access here, but it should say remote access, which is of course increasing the access for a physical location. So if I'm a city resident and I show up to the Eastlink Center to do business with the city, I should be able to conduct my business at the Eastlink Center and should avoid that being shuffled to a different city facility. If I am building a deck and I have a question about my deck permit and I show up to City Hall, we should have customer service representatives who have knowledge articles that they can reference to provide answers to those residents without shifting them across town to go to the service center. And then from the city's perspective, that allows us to an additional opportunity for engagement. So obviously the focus today, and specifically with regards to this larger customer service strategy, as Kinza mentioned, is the 311 access point. Again, this provides consistent number that's familiar for residents and visitors as well to access the city for non-emergency services. This point, of course, requires council resolution, and should that council resolution be received either this month, we would look at an anticipated launch of 311 in Q1 or Q2 of 2021. The application timelines with the CTRC following resolution are about 6 months. So this entire strategy, of course, inclusive of the 311 piece, is really looking at how we as an organization can improve our customer service and, of course, the experience for our customers. We recognize that residents rarely just call the city to chit-chat. Residents that are calling the city are really looking to address a quality of life concern. There's something that's bothering them in the community or they are looking for some service, and so we need to treat that concern with diligence. The look here, so the goal is, of course, to have our customer service representatives answer at that first point of contact any inquiries that residents may have. Now, should a customer need to be transferred to a subject matter expert, we want that transfer to be seamless and the integration to the subject matter expert such that an answer can be provided within that first transfer.
The goal of the CXI strategy, of course, is not when the phone hangs up that we're done. That's when a lot of the work starts. We're going to look for feedback from residents to try and improve the system and innovate as we go along. Of course, we hope that anytime a resident calls the city again, that they can expect the same or better service. Anytime that we look to implement some type of a strategy, and in this case, the customer service strategy, we want to look at it from the customer's impact and try and tag some measurable items that we can measure as we improve the system. So there's a few items that show up here on screen. Certainly closing the loop is an important measurable for us as an organization. Currently, it's estimated that 10 to 15% of the calls that come through the contact center are actually repeat calls on the same item. And so we really want to close that off and ensure that it's just a single point of contact for people that are calling the city of Grande Prairie. The second item measurable that shows up here is that contact resolution. Again, implementing systems and technology that empower our customer service representatives to answer questions as they come through. We want to increase that by 50% and really avoid the process that is transferring to transferring to transferring. We want to try and address customer concerns at the first point of contact. And the final measurable here is really to empower customers themselves to self-serve. And so the approach is looking at improving our systems for customers to self-serve by 12%, which again, the more that our customers can self-serve, it actually decreases the call volumes that the contact center is handling. Just a quick slide here on next steps. Again, the focus for the presentation and certainly within the report today is looking for that council resolution to move forward with the 311 application. As we move into the fall, we would continue our conversations and engagement internally with departments, start to look at technology solutions for the case management software, and then of course train staff to be familiar and comfortable with any of those changes. As we move through into the new year, of course, 311 would be implemented potentially in Q1, Q2, and we would look at a very robust, clean engagement process for citizens to really discuss and explain the functionality of 311. So we certainly thank committee for your time today, and we'd be fine to answer any questions that you may have.
So this report, go ahead, Jennifer.
Thanks, Councillor and Chairman Hess. So I think this is brilliant. I'm very excited that we're considering moving forward with this, but I think we will be moving forward with this. And my question is, though, kind of a technical one. If other cities are using 311, how does my phone, or how does it know which city I'm trying to talk to when I dial 311 on a cell phone? Like, so if I'm, you know, if my cell phone is a local number, but they aren't anymore necessarily, then it maybe would know. But what if I'm close to Red Deer when I make the call to our city? Does it automatically route to Red Deer? What's the deal there?
Okay. With 311, the cell phones are based on geographic area, so where the cell phone tower is positioned. So it picks up where you are and routes it to the community you're in. So visitors would be able to use our 311 when they come to town, because once they're in our geographic area, they come to us. For landlines, people still using landlines, it's based on city exchanges. So the first 3 digits after our area code would route it to us.
Thank you. So then my question, if I have a concern that I need to talk to the Citizen Contact Center, and I think of it when we're headed down to Calgary and I call near Red Deer, it's going to go to Red Deer?
Through the chair. Yes, your call, it is based all on geography. That would be the reason we would maintain sort of the 311 would move to our central contact number that we have now, the 0300 number, and that number would be available still for those who are calling from outside of region.
That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good question. Kevin, too?
Thank you very much, Case and the crew and Ellison. And this has been a long time coming. I know I've heard about this sort of thing over the last few councils. We weren't ready for it. We weren't sure the costs and all that kind of stuff. but I'm a proponent for this, and I'm looking forward. In fact, I would like to make the motion. There are two recommendations that you want, I'm looking for administration. Are both of them valid motions, or we take one or the other?
Then who's going to answer, Shane or Horacio?
Through the chair, I can answer this question. Please make both motions separately.
Thank you very much. So with that, if there's no other questions, Councillor Minhas, I would move that council or the committee move forward, that the Corporate Services Committee recommends that the council pass the following resolution. Council authorities City Administration to apply to the Canadian Radio and Telecommunications Commission, which is the CRTC, for approval to implement the 311 service for the City of Grande Prairie and to proceed with implementation upon receive approval from CRTC. That's motion one.
Motion is on the table, and gentlemen, you go right ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I do have a question. Actually, I've got a question for maybe Councillor Clayton or Councillor Friesen as Rotarians before I ask a question for administration. And I'm racking my brain. Hasn't there been a push with Rotary clubs and other nonprofits in the community to get a 311 service going for accessing nonprofit help in the community?
Go ahead, Jackie.
Thanks, Chairman. As to my recollection, it wasn't through Rotary. From my understanding, it was through the Community Foundation. I know that through some nonprofit service groups there was a discussion, but that's the only recollection I have.
And the United Way as well was a big driver in that, if I may, Chairman Hess. And the last buzz I heard about it was probably 2 or 3 years ago. So I think it's kind of gone by the wayside.
Okay, thank you, Judith. And Kevin, too, go ahead.
Yeah, it's come to council a number of times, and actually there's another one there. It was 411, which is another one. But this is the furthest I've seen anything actually go forward, and I want to make sure that that does go forward. So I'm really looking forward to this. I know that this department has improved over the years, but this could make it to where we need to have it. So thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Motion is on the table. If there are no questions, all in favor? Motion carried. Kevin O'Toole, go ahead and put the second one.
I move that the Corporate Services Committee receive this report for information.
Clyde, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Councillor Minhas. Sometimes when we receive a report for information, it means that everything comes to a standstill. And I want to make sure that the recommendations that are made in this report are carried on. Is there a different kind of motion that could be made that would encourage the committee to, or sorry, the working group to carry on?
Thank you very much, Clyde. And Kevin O'Toole, go ahead.
Yeah, just before I made the first motion, I asked administration, do we do first motion or the second motion, or do we do both? And I was encouraged to make both motions.
Administration, any update on this one? How are we going to fix it?
Yeah. Through the chair, I guess to speak to this would be something that didn't need council direction in order to move forward with. So that was why there was a decision to say it didn't need council direction to move forward with. So that's why it was a decision to make it a report for information. But there could be a separate motion to direct administration to move forward with the recommendations proposed in the report.
Oh, thank you very much. So that motion will stay as it is, or we have to change it?
Mr. Horacio would like to talk.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I suggest, you can pass second motion as well. However, the first motion is quite clear that the last line says, proceed with implementation upon reception of approval from the CRTC. So direction from Council to Administration is clear on the first motion to proceed with implementing 311. We have a plan developed with the team. So I think the first motion for sure is the key motion for us to receive direction. Up to you to go ahead with the second or not. I don't see that as a critical motion to pass.
Okay, thank you. I'd still like to go through with the second motion.
So we don't need to go through second motion?
I'd still like to make it.
You still like to make it? Okay, so motion is on the table. Is there any other question? If it's not, all in favor? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Gavin and Eunice. We are just about outstanding items. Shane, are you on the hook again?
I am Chairman Haas. There's no updates to the oil list at this time.
Thank you very much. So,
sorry, Chairman Haas?
Yeah, go ahead, Jackie.
I did have a question for our other business. I don't know if you skipped over that, or missed me, but.
Go ahead.
Okay, so as a non-voting member on this committee, I'm looking for some support from committee to have a council discussion in regards to council getting back to meeting in person. I can't make a motion on this committee, so I would look for support. I don't want this discussion necessarily to be debated at this committee. I think it's a full council conversation. But as we know, COVID numbers are increasing, but they're still quite managed in our community. Our city council has not been together in meetings. There are other municipalities across the province that are meeting. There are other council rooms that are being refurbished to make meeting in person safe. I don't know what this looks like, but I am confident that administration could find a way for even some of us to meet in person. There are circumstances where not everybody is able to meet in person, and that's understandable. I don't want this to cost a lot of money. I just think that if administration has a plan or any options that could bring even part of council together in person with some zooming in, that we should explore those opportunities. We're sending our kids back to school in September. I don't see, and there will be discussion that, numbers are going to continue to increase. The second wave is coming. I completely understand that. And I'm not saying that council needs to always meet in person. If the numbers get to a certain point, which we're going to see more information, what the triggers are for mandatory masks come September 8th discussion. But I would just like to see administration's recommendations in regards to council meeting in person with as many councillors as possible. And so I'd look for somebody from this committee for some support to possibly make that motion.
Thank you very much, Jackie. Shane, could you maybe answer this part of it?
No, I thank you, Chairman Haas. I would just provide some advice if committee is looking at a motion on this, in that it would be important for us to narrow the range of options that committee were interested in council or looking at exploring. As I think I've indicated before, we have a zero cost option to bring 5 members into the council chamber, and the rest of administration and council ability to zoom in, and that would meet we'd all meet our broadcast requirements. We could manage any option across the range with enough time and money. So it would just be really clear what council's expectation was on outside participation. But I can say that we cannot fit all of council currently in our existing council chamber and meet AHS recommendations. So just some overall guidance as you're thinking about what motion to pass.
Thank you very much for update. Clyde? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman Haas. I just wanted to ask Councillor Clayton about her suggestion. You mentioned many things that have to do with the fact that we have not been meeting in person, but you didn't mention any reasons why you think that it's important that we do. And I wondered if you had any comments about that.
Sure, if I may, Chair Minhas, absolutely. I'm hearing from other councillors, including myself, that these meetings are getting to a point where we're not as effective as we could be if we're meeting in person. It's hard to sit for long hours of time at your desk and retain the focus that you traditionally would have when you're in person. I can tell from other discussions with other councillors that other people feel the same way. And so I think it's time for us to get back to person for those of us who it's possible. And as Director Bork mentioned, if that means 5 people in person and 4 people zooming in, that's a no-cost option. I think that would be a great option for council to consider.
Thank you, Jackie. Glad you're satisfied with this one. Okay. So Dylan, you go ahead.
I also think that as we talk about this, public participation is really important to me, and it honestly kind of takes me on both directions. On one hand, I'd hate to see us meeting in person and the public can only zoom in. But on the other hand, I know that especially when the public's concerned about something we're doing, the public having a physical presence, I think actually is important. I think it is important that somebody has the ability to show up and protest at City Hall when we're meeting. I think it's important that somebody has the ability to come and sit in the gallery and actually watch us debate things. And I don't know how you do that safely under AHS guidelines, and if that's even ever going to be possible in our chambers while COVID's here, but maybe there are other places we could do that where, especially if this is something that's going to be lasting for potentially years, we've got AHS guidelines. I really do think it's important that we figure out how to give the public physical presence personally.
Thank you, Dylan. Horacio, go ahead, please.
Yep, thank you, Chairman. Just a reminder that the ministerial order that is in place, there is specific wording related to the public participation. And unfortunately, the public is not allowed to be in person at this time. In council, the order is clear to come up with different means, digital means for the public to participate. So even if the decision is to go 5 council members back to the chamber physically, we will have to provide electronic means for the public to participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Horacio. So what the committee, Calvin Toll, go ahead.
I would make the motion that Councillor Clayton had suggested is going to a zero cost, minimal 5 or maximum 5 members in council, the rest zoom in at the next available possibility of voting on this, which would be next council meeting. And so I don't know if I got all those words in, Councillor Clayton, but if you want to streamline that a little bit, I'm open for some suggestions.
I'll check with the Legislative Services Clerk, but I think that ultimately it's committee recommends council approve council configuration with maximum of 5 people in person, 4 people through electronic means, with a zero cost impact for discussion at the next council meeting.
So that motion.
Kind of what I said, I think.
Yeah, that's what I said. Okay, Klein, you go ahead.
Thank you. One of the concerns that I have about zooming into a meeting that's in the chamber is that the sound quality for those of us that are going to be zooming in won't be good. I know that I was unable to stay involved in the last ICF meeting because those people that were speaking from large rooms couldn't be heard. At least I couldn't hear them well enough. So I'm thinking that there may be some cost involved if IT is able to wire in the sound that comes from the individual speakers' microphones into the Zoom broadcast, so that the sound is legible for those of us that won't be in the chambers.
Thank you very much, Clyde. I agree with you. And Shane, you can go ahead.
That is part of the current technical solution that's proposed, that it would use the live mics in the chamber. If there was a willingness, I can arrange for a test for us to do before the next council meeting. If we had some participants that were willing to come to the chamber, we could run a partial meeting and we could talk about that offline, how that would happen, and you would get a feeling of whether that worked or not, and we can make sure that happened before the discussion.
Thank you, Shane. Update. So any other question on the motion? I don't see anybody. So if it's not, all in favor? Motion carried. Jackie, you're happy? And now there's no outstanding items. So with that, we're done for today, and you guys have a good lunch and enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.